Chapter 199. To be honest, Sun Xinjing did not want things to be like what Zhang Leji had said. In the South County branch, other than Yi Xian, there was someone else who knew about the secret room where the blueprint was kept. That was because that meant betrayal. Someone betrayed the sect. This was something that Sun Xinjing did not want to see. If the blueprint was stolen by Yi Xian, it could only be said that he did not have enough willpower. However, if it was stolen by someone else, it meant that someone had wanted to betray the sect for benefits from the very beginning. At this moment, when he heard that Bai Jianmu might know the location of the blueprint, Sun Xinjing actually had a faint sense of anticipation in his heart. He hoped that what Bai Jianmu said was true, and what Zhang Leji said was just a guess. Seeing the anticipation in Sun Xinjing's eyes, Bai Jianmu immediately understood his master's thoughts. He was delighted and quickly spoke. "Master, among the disciples present, other than 7th junior brother and 8th junior sister, the rest have been by your side for at least 10 years. After so many years, if they knew the location of the secret room, they would have stolen the good things inside long ago. Why would they wait until now? Master, I think that it's impossible for the blueprint to be stolen by someone other than Yi Xian." After Sun Xinjing heard Bai Jianmu's words, his eyes could not help but light up. Bai Jianmu's words were definitely very reasonable. Everyone had been in the sect for so long. If they knew the location of the blueprint, would they wait until now to steal it? There was not only one blueprint in that secret room. It could be said that the best things in the South County branch were all in that secret room. If someone knew about that secret room, would they wait until now to steal it? Impossible. Sun Xinjing only thought about this question for a moment before immediately rejecting it. Since someone had deliberately found the secret room where the blueprint was placed, they would definitely have made a move early. Even if they did not have the blueprint at that time, there would still be other good things. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing's face immediately relaxed. When he raised his head to look at the disciples in front of him, he immediately felt much closer. Thinking that none of these disciples knew about the secret room, Sun Xinjing felt relieved. At the same time, he sighed secretly. It was not for anyone else, but for his most trusted Yi Xian. If there were no accidents like stealing the blueprint, Sun Xinjing might really pass on the position of the branch leader to him. However, why did Yi Xian have to be so stubborn? Why did he have to steal the blueprint at this critical moment? Could it be that he couldn't even wait for a few days? Or, as Bai Jianmu had said, Yi Xian really wanted to take the opportunity to eliminate his opponent after stealing the blueprint. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing sighed even more. He had already told Yi Xian. Why was he still so stubborn? After hearing Sun Xinjing's sigh, Bai Jianmu was ecstatic. He knew that his master had already believed his words and was sighing for Yi Xian. At the same time, Bai Jianmu also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. If his master really believed Zhang Leji's words and suspected that the person who stole the blueprint was not Yi Xian, but someone else, then this matter would really be difficult to handle. Now everything was back to his plan. As long as his master believed that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint, Bai Jianmu did not care about anything else. Zhang Leji could not hear Sun Xinjing's sigh. He knew that things were not good. He also knew who his master was sighing for. It was definitely for Yi Xian. There was no other possibility. In this way, his master did not believe his own words, but Bai Jianmu's words. Yi Xian was once again the person who stole the blueprint, and it was very likely that he would become Yi Xian's accomplice again. He would become the target of Bai Jianmu's group. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly cupped his hands towards his master and said loudly, "Master, this disciple thinks that what junior brother Bai said is wrong. Someone knew the location of the secret room, but didn't steal it because there was nothing worth stealing. It wasn't until he obtained this precious blueprint that he chose to steal it. Master, please believe in disciples' words. This kind of thing is definitely possible." When Sun Xinjing heard this, he nodded. Just as he was about to speak, Bai Jianmu beat him to it and said, Master, this disciple thinks that what third senior brother said is wrong. In Master's secret chamber, this disciple guesses that there must be many valuable things. For someone who cultivates in the art of mechanisms, these are rare treasures. I think that anyone who practices the art of traps will definitely not be able to resist taking 1 or 2 items when they see so many treasures. At this point, Bai Jianmu paused for a moment before continuing. Master, after so many years, I don't think you have lost anything, right? Sun Xinjing nodded after hearing Bai Jianmu's words. Indeed, I have never lost anything. After hearing Sun Xinjing's answer, Bai Jianmu's lips curled into a smug smile. He turned to look at Zhang Leji and said with a smile, Third senior brother, you heard me. Third senior brother, you also heard Master's words. If someone knows the secret room where Master keeps the blueprints, then why hasn't anything been lost in all these years? Third senior brother, why don't you tell me the reason for this? At this moment, before Zhang Leji could reply, Tang Jianan, who was at the side, beat him to it and said, Third junior brother Bai is right. If anyone is deliberately looking for the secret room where Master kept the blueprints, they would definitely take a few of them for cultivation when they saw so many precious treasures. Why would they wait until now? After hearing their questions, Zhang Leji was a little puzzled. Although Bai Jianmu and Tang Jianan weren't on the same side as him, Zhang Leji still agreed with what they said. Since they knew the secret room where Master kept the blueprint, why hadn't he lost anything? Zhang Leji also believed that although the blueprint was the most precious item in Master's secret room, there were still many good things that could attract people to steal it. However, why hadn't a single item been lost after so many years? What was the reason? Thinking of this, Zhang Leji's heart skipped a beat. He thought of another possibility. Could it be that the person who stole the blueprint had only recently found out the location of the secret room? Thinking of this possibility, Zhang Leji thought about it carefully and felt that his guess made sense. Perhaps it was that precious blueprint that attracted someone, so he thought of ways to find the location of the secret room. After knowing the location of the secret room, he decisively made his move and stole the blueprint. If that was the case, everything could be explained. Why had Master never lost anything in the past? It was because no one knew the location of the secret room. Now that he had lost something, it was because of the blueprint. Chapter 200. This blueprint was too precious. Everyone knew that as long as they could get their hands on it, their skills in engineering would improve greatly. Under such temptation, there should be someone who was tempted. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji hurriedly cupped his fists towards Sun Xinjing and said, Master, disciple guesses that after the blueprint was sent here, someone coveted it and deliberately searched for the location of the secret room. After finding it, they decisively stole the blueprint. It was also because of this that Master did not discover that something had been stolen in the past. That was because at that time, no one knew the location of the secret room. After Sun Xinjing heard Zhang Leji's words, his eyes suddenly narrowed and his heart suddenly rose again. According to what Zhang Leji said, it was only after the blueprint was delivered that someone wanted to explore his secret room. Then, they took the opportunity to steal it. This was also possible. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jianmu and asked, What do you think? After hearing his master's question, Bai Jianmu hurriedly cupped his fists and replied, Master, I think that this is absolutely impossible. First of all, although disciple does not know where the secret room where Master kept the blueprint is, disciple guesses that it must be very hidden and not easily discovered by others. It has only been a month since this blueprint was sent here. I think it's impossible to find Master's secret room within this 1 month. Therefore, disciple thinks that third senior brother's words are unreasonable. I also don't think that anyone else knows the location of the secret room. Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu paused for a moment. He turned to look at Zhang Leji and sneered. Third senior brother, do you think that someone can find Master's secret room in such a short time? After hearing Bai Jinmu's words, Zhang Leji only smiled faintly and said, Junior brother Bai, Master has never guarded against us disciples. If someone has evil intentions and deliberately searched for the secret room where Master kept the blueprint, I think it is still possible to find it. After hearing Zhang Leji's answer, Bai Jinmu sneered and asked loudly, Third senior brother, you sound so confident. Do you know who stole the drawing? Or do you know who else besides Yi Xian knows about Master's secret room? Zhang Leji shook his head. I'm not sure either. However, I believe that there's no way to hide the truth. We'll definitely be able to find that person. Bai Jinmu sneered. Third senior brother, since you don't know who it is, and you don't know if anyone else knows about Master's secret room, you can say that there is someone else besides Yi Xian who knows about Master's secret room. At this point, Bai Jinmu paused and turned to Sun Xinjing. He cupped his fists and said loudly, Master, I suspect third senior brother's intentions. Third senior brother did not know who had stolen the blueprints, nor did he know if there was anyone else who knew about the secret room where Master had kept the blueprints. However, other than Yi Xian, there was someone else who knew about the secret room where Master had kept the blueprints. I've always suspected that third senior brother was very suspicious. He wanted to use this excuse to hide his true intentions. Master, please investigate this matter thoroughly. Sun Xinjing was stunned when he heard Bai Jinmu's words. If Zhang Leji was really like what Bai Jinmu had said, saying that there was someone else who knew about the secret room where Master had kept the blueprints for another purpose, it was really suspicious. At this thought, Sun Xinjing's face darkened. He turned to look at Zhang Leji and asked, You heard what Bai Jinmu said. Do you have anything to say? Zhang Leji secretly cursed Bai Jinmu for being cunning when he heard what Bai Jinmu had said to his master. However, he couldn't help but admire Bai Jinmu. This guy could always find an excuse to refute in the face of adversity. At this thought, Zhang Leji hurriedly said, Master, no one knows if this is true or not, but do you think the possibility that I mentioned will happen? Sun Xinjing thought for a moment and nodded. Go on. Zhang Leji continued, Since there's such a possibility, why don't we investigate further? Don't forget that we still haven't found the whereabouts of the blueprint. The longer this matter drags on, the easier it will be for the blueprints to leak out. Therefore, we have to find the blueprints as soon as possible. As soon as Zhang Leji finished speaking, Bai Jinmu sneered. Third senior brother, we haven't found the blueprints because Yi Xian refused to hand them over. It has nothing to do with anyone else. I think that as long as Yi Xian stays in Repenting Pavilion for a while, he will definitely hand them over obediently. After hearing Bai Jinmu's words, Zhang Leji was furious. If Yi Xian stayed in Repenting Pavilion for a while longer, it was hard to say if he could come out alive. Usually, staying in the Repentance Pavilion for 3 days was enough to make one's nerves collapse. But now Yi Xian had already stayed there for 4 days. If he stayed there for a little longer, no one could say for sure what kind of accident would happen. Looking at Bai Jinmu's calm face, Zhang Leji could only sigh inwardly. He joined the sect 5 years earlier than Bai Jinmu. When Bai Jinmu joined the sect, Zhang Leji had helped him many times. In Zhang Leji's opinion, it was only natural for him to help his junior brother. Although he didn't do as much as his eldest senior brother in this aspect, he had never rejected Bai Jinmu when he asked him for guidance. He would always guide Bai Jinmu carefully until Bai Jinmu mastered it. At that time, Bai Jinmu was humble and polite. He was very respectful to Zhang Leji. The third senior brother, he called out every day, was so sincere. But now, things had turned out this way. Looking at Bai Jinmu's sneer and the disdain in his eyes, Zhang Leji felt a trace of sadness in his heart. When a person grew up, they would definitely change a lot. But it was really surprising that they could turn out this way. Zhang Liji took a deep breath and calmed his chaotic emotions. He looked at Bai Jianmu and said slowly, Bai Jianmu, you should know very well what kind of place Repenting Pavilion is. Yi Xian has already been in there for 4 days. It's not a short time. If he stays in there any longer, there might be a big problem. If Yi Xian is really behind this, then no matter what happens, it will be Yi Xian's own fault. But if Yi Xian isn't behind this, what will happen if something happens? Bai Jianmu, haven't you thought about it? Bai Jianmu was stunned when he heard Zhang Liji's words. But then, he thought of his family and his situation. His heart, which had been a little relaxed, turned cold again. Third senior brother, what right do you have to say that Yi Xian isn't behind this? Up until now, tell me, who is more suspicious than Yi Xian? In the entire South County branch, tell me, who could have stolen that blueprint? Other than Yi Xian, who knows the location of the blueprint, who else could have stolen it? Chapter 201. Bai Jianmu looked at Zhang Liji and asked coldly, Third senior brother, tell me, other than Yi Xian, who else could possibly steal the blueprint? Zhang Liji smiled bitterly after hearing Bai Jianmu's question. If he knew who stole the blueprint, he wouldn't have wasted so much time talking to Bai Jianmu. Although he didn't want to answer Bai Jianmu's question, his master was watching from the side. It was impossible not to answer. Looking at Sun Xinjing's intense gaze, Zhang Liji understood that his master was also eager to know who stole the blueprint. Zhang Liji thought for a moment, then he suddenly turned around and looked at his master Sun Xinjing, cupped his fists and said, Master, this disciple has already said that this disciple does not know who stole the blueprints. This time I invited everyone here, because I want everyone to discuss who is most likely to steal the blueprint. At this point, Zhang Liji paused for a moment. He thought about it carefully before continuing. Master, in order to find the blueprint as soon as possible, I think we can't think too much about it now. We can only distinguish the people who are most likely to steal the blueprint from those who are unlikely to steal the blueprint. I think this is the only way to find the person who stole the blueprint as soon as possible. At this point, Zhang Liji once again cupped his hands towards his master and bowed. Master, please allow me to thoroughly investigate everyone. After hearing Zhang Liji's words, Sun Xinjing narrowed his eyes and thought for a while before turning to look at Bai Jianmu. Do you have a better idea? After hearing Zhang Liji's words, Bai Jianmu already knew what Zhang Liji wanted to do. He wanted to return things to the way they were before. However, this method was very disadvantageous to Bai Jianmu and his group. Therefore, Bai Jianmu definitely wouldn't agree. However, his master was watching from the side and he couldn't interrupt Zhang Liji. He could only listen to Zhang Liji's words and think of a countermeasure. At this moment, after hearing his master's question, Bai Jianmu, who had already thought of a countermeasure, quickly bowed and answered. Master, your disciple doesn't think it's appropriate. After saying that, Bai Jianmu glanced at Zhang Liji from the corner of his eyes before continuing. Master, we are all brothers, and we are all loyal to Master. If we continue to investigate like we did just now, I'm afraid that it will cause everyone's dissatisfaction, and it will lead to a bad result. At that time, the gains will not make up for the losses. Therefore, this matter is of great importance. Master, please consider it carefully and do not act rashly. After hearing Bai Jianmu's reply, Sun Xinjing nodded secretly. At the same time, he felt a headache coming on. Zhang Liji was right. What he said made sense. If he wanted to find the blueprint, he had to investigate as soon as possible and find all the suspicious people. Then, they would differentiate and try to find the person who stole the blueprint. Under such circumstances, this was undoubtedly the best solution. What Sun Xinjing was worried about was that the blueprints would be leaked out. If that really happened, how could he face his master? Therefore, the blueprint had to be found as soon as possible without any delay. However, although Zhang Liji's words made sense, Bai Jianmu's words didn't make sense either. If he did as Zhang Liji said, all the disciples would be suspected. No matter who it was, they would be suspected. If the person who stole the blueprints was the real culprit, he naturally deserved to be punished. However, among the 8 disciples, only one of them was the one who stole the blueprints, and he deserved to be punished the most. However, other than the one who stole the blueprints, the other 7 people would suffer an undeserved calamity and be suspected for no reason. The feeling of being suspected was definitely not good. If he did this, the disciples who didn't steal the blueprints would definitely be disappointed. At that time, even if the blueprints were found, these disciples would be dissatisfied, and there would be a barrier between them and their master. Sun Xinjing knew that once there was a barrier, it would never be resolved. Although everyone didn't care on the surface, this barrier would never be truly resolved. It would only be buried in the deepest part of their hearts, and they wouldn't be willing to think about it. However, no matter how deep it was hidden, it would resurface sooner or later. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing was also a little hesitant. He had taken in 8 disciples, and taught each of them with great care. He almost treated them as his own sons. However, if the disciples that he had painstakingly nurtured had bad thoughts about him, that was definitely not something that Sun Xinjing wanted to see. What should he do? How should he solve this problem? Should he listen to Zhang Liji's suggestion and immediately start investigating all the disciples, or should he do as Bai Jianmu said and think of another way? These 2 thoughts were spinning around in Sun Xinjing's mind, and it was simply giving him a splitting headache. If he couldn't find the blueprints, he would let his master down. If he suspected his own disciples, these disciples would resent him. These 2 outcomes were not what Sun Xinjing wanted. His master had painstakingly taught him for so many years, and even gave him the blueprints that he had spent half his life researching for him to study. However, he was so useless that he actually lost such a precious blueprint. If the blueprints were to be leaked out, wouldn't it be adding insult to injury? How could he face his master again? The blueprints must be found. However, could these disciples be suspected for no reason? These disciples in the hall were all people who had been acknowledged by him. In terms of character and talent, Sun Xinjing had carefully investigated them before accepting them as disciples. Was it fair for them to suspect them for no reason? Bai Jianmu, who had been waiting for Sun Xinjing's reply, saw his master's frown and knew that his master had been moved by his words. He couldn't help but feel secretly happy. In order to increase his persuasiveness, Bai Jianmu gave Tang Jianan and Lu Huarong, who were beside him, a look, indicating for them to come forward and add fuel to the fire so that his master could make a decision early. Tang Jianan, who was at the side, saw the look that Bai Jianmu gave him and immediately understood in his heart. He hurriedly took a step forward and cupped his fists to Sun Xinjing, who was deep in thought, and said loudly, "Master, I think that junior brother Bai's words make sense. All of us disciples are loyal to Master, and we have never thought of doing anything that would let Master down." Speaking up to this point, Tang Jinan's tone paused for a moment before he continued with a sorrowful tone. "Master, I think that third junior brother's words are inappropriate. All of us know that the blueprints are very important. Not only did we know, but we also caught Yi Xian, who stole the blueprints in the first place. However, third junior brother refused to admit that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. This made us feel very helpless. Not only that, third junior brother even wants to examine all of us. This is simply an insult to us." Chapter 202. Tang Jinan cupped his fists at Sun Xinjing after he finished speaking. "Master, I think that third junior brother's actions are inappropriate. He has disappointed the other senior brothers." Sun Xinjing nodded subconsciously after he heard Tang Jinan's words. Tang Jinan's words were exactly what he was worried about. Even if the blueprint was found, the disciples would be dissatisfied with him. This was something he did not want to see. Sun Xinjing thought for a while, then turned to Zhang Leji and asked, "You heard what Tang Jianan said. Do you have any other thoughts?" Zhang Leji shook his head. "Master, since second senior brother said it well, he must have a way to solve this problem. Why don't we listen to second senior brother's idea?" Tang Jianan's expression changed drastically after he heard Zhang Leji's answer. What could he do? His only thought was to drag Zhang Leji into this matter as soon as possible. Then, everything would be fine. As for whether or not the blueprint could be found, it had nothing to do with Tang Jianan. So what if they found it? He, Tang Jianan, would not benefit at all. Why would he do something that did not benefit him? At this moment, Tang Jianan's heart skipped a beat after he heard Zhang Leji's words. He just remembered that if he spouted nonsense, he would be implicated. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan felt that something was wrong. He hurriedly turned his head and looked at Lu Huarong beside him, hoping that he could say something quickly to solve this crisis. Lu Huarong saw that Tang Jianan kept giving him signals with his eyes, and did not dare to delay. After all, if Tang Jianan collapsed, it would not benefit him at all. Thinking of this, Lu Huarong quickly took a step forward and cupped his fists at his master before speaking loudly. "Master, since third senior brother begged you to gather everyone here, he must have a way. Why don't we ask third senior brother to share his idea?" Sun Xinjing nodded after he heard Lu Huarong's words. Lu Huarong's words made sense. Since Zhang Leji dared to summon everyone, it meant that he definitely had a way to solve this problem. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Zhang Leji and said slowly, "You don't have to be humble. There are no outsiders here. If you have anything to say, just say it and we can discuss it." After Zhang Leji heard his master's words, he shook his head. "Master, my method is the same as just now. Investigate everyone one by one and find out the person who might have stolen the blueprint. Then we can screen out the person who actually stole the blueprint." Sun Xinjing frowned again after hearing Zhang Leji's answer. If there was any other way, he really didn't want to use this method. If they used Zhang Leji's method, all the disciples in the hall would definitely be dissatisfied. That wasn't something Zhang Leji wanted to see. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Leji and asked again, "Is there no other way?" When Zhang Leji heard this, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. "No." After Sun Xinjing heard Zhang Leji's answer, he turned his head in disappointment. He turned his gaze to Tang Jianan and asked, "Do you have any good ideas?" After Tang Jianan heard his master's words, he quickly replied, "There's nothing we can do about it." After hearing Tang Jianan's answer, Sun Xinjing was even more disappointed. He turned his gaze to Bai Jianmu and asked, "What about you? Do you have any good ideas?" When Bai Jianmu heard this, he also shook his head. "Master, I don't have any good ideas either." After hearing Bai Jianmu's answer, Sun Xinjing was even more disappointed. He turned his gaze to Lu Huarong and asked, "What about you? Do you have any good ideas to find the person who stole the blueprint?" When Lu Huarong heard this, he was about to speak. Suddenly, his heart skipped a beat and he quickly replied loudly, "Master, I'm slow-witted. I still don't understand. The person who stole the blueprint is clearly locked up in the Repentance Pavilion. Why do we still have to look for the person who stole the blueprint? Master, I really can't remember what the reason is." As soon as Lu Huarong finished saying these words, everyone suddenly had a feeling of realization. Bai Jianmu secretly praised Lu Huarong in his heart for thinking so quickly. Why had they been arguing here for so long? At this moment, Bai Jianmu really didn't have any ideas about the blueprint. His thoughts were similar to Tang Jianan's. As long as they defeated Yi Xian and Zhang Leji, the blueprint wasn't important. However, after arguing for so long, they had forgotten what they were arguing about. Zhang Leji's question was their best opportunity. If they pointed out that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint, their master would definitely believe that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. When Bai Jianmu thought of this, he secretly regretted not thinking of this when his master asked him earlier. However, since he had thought of it earlier, wouldn't he be able to say his thoughts immediately and prove Yi Xian's crime of stealing the blueprint? However, although Bai Jianmu didn't say it earlier, the effect of Lu Huarong saying it now wasn't bad. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu looked up at his master. Indeed, he saw Sun Xinjing frowning and thinking with his head lowered. Although he didn't show anything on the surface and could only see Sun Xinjing's distress, his expression showed that he was also hesitating. Bai Jianmu's guess was right. Sun Xinjing was indeed hesitating. Just now, no one had mentioned Yi Xian and the Repentance Pavilion for a while, so he had forgotten about it because he was nervous. Now that Lu Huarong brought it up again, it reminded him of Yi Xian. Everything had returned to its original point. No one could say for sure whether Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint or not. No one had concrete evidence to prove whether Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint or not. Everything was just everyone's guess. Although everyone was suspicious about the stolen blueprints, Yi Xian was the most suspicious. This was because he was the only one who knew the location where Sun Xinjing kept the blueprint. This was the key evidence, and also the reason why everyone suspected him. However, no one was sure whether Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint or not. Everyone knew what Zhang Liji had said just now. Yi Xian had no motive to steal the blueprint because if there were no accidents, he would soon become the next leader of the South County branch. At that time, the blueprint would naturally belong to him. Under such circumstances, as long as Yi Xian wasn't a fool, he would definitely not steal the blueprint. Not only would he not steal the blueprint, but Yi Xian should also protect the blueprint from being stolen. However, the blueprint was lost, and the only person who knew where the blueprint was placed was Yi Xian. No one could refute this key evidence, not even Yi Xian himself. Chapter 203. It was a fact that Yi Xian knew the location where the blueprints were kept, and it was also proof that he had the blueprint. But could it really be used as proof? Although everyone had their suspicions, no one dared to say it out loud. Because if Yi Xian was not the one who stole the blueprints, it meant that someone else knew the location where the blueprints were kept. What did that mean? It meant that everyone was a suspect. Everyone was a suspect. Even 7th Junior Mei Guangji, who was the latest to join, and 8th Junior Sister Li Shuiyan were suspects. This was something that no one was willing to accept. Therefore, the best conclusion was that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. But was Yi Xian really the one who stole the blueprints? No one was willing to think about this question. They buried it in their hearts and were unwilling to bring it up again. After hearing Lu Huarong's words, Sun Xinjing remained calm on the surface and only frowned. But in his heart, huge waves were surging, making him feel dizzy. Sun Xinjing did not know whether Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. According to his initial plan, as long as he locked Yi Xian in the Repentance Pavilion, he would spill everything he knew in no time. If he was really the one who stole the blueprints, today was already the 4th day. Yi Xian should not be able to hold it in anymore. Logically speaking, Yi Xian should have taken out the blueprints long ago. But until today, no one had reported that Yi Xian was going to take them out. Outside the Repentance Pavilion, Sun Xinjing had already gotten people to wait there day and night. As long as Yi Xian made a move, these people would immediately come to report. But no one came to report. Nothing. What did this mean? It meant that Yi Xian had a strong will. Or was Yi Xian not the one who stole the blueprints? Sun Xinjing couldn't figure out which one was the real thing. Looking at the disciples in front of him, none of them looked like they had stolen the blueprints. However, after thinking about it carefully, all of them were suspicious of stealing the blueprints. Needless to say, Even Sun Xinjing was ecstatic when he saw this precious blueprint. If he looked at it from another angle, even Sun Xinjing himself could not guarantee that he would not be tempted. Even he was tempted by the precious blueprints, not to mention his disciples. They would definitely be tempted as well. Under such circumstances, everyone was a suspect, and it was possible that they would steal the blueprint on impulse. However, even though he knew that this was the case, Sun Xinjing didn't want to do it when he thought about the consequences of a large-scale investigation. Because if he did that, the result would definitely be dissatisfaction. Thinking of these things, it was really a headache to talk about some serious matters. Sun Xinjing was thinking hard. The disciples in front of him were looking at him nervously. They all wanted to know what his decision was. Seeing that Sun Xinjing did not speak for a long time, Tang Jianan, who was waiting anxiously, decided to add fuel to the fire for his master and let him make a decision early. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan subconsciously glanced at Bai Jianmu. Recently, Bai Jianmu was also looking at him. When Bai Jianmu saw Tang Jianan looking over, he already knew what he was thinking because he also wanted to do this. At this moment, since he understood Tang Jianan's thoughts, he would let him do it. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu nodded slightly at Tang Jianan, indicating that he could rest assured and do it. Seeing Bai Jianmu nod, Tang Jianan was relieved. As long as Bai Jianmu nodded, Bai Jianmu would definitely come out to remedy any mistakes he made. He would not fall into an awkward situation again. Tang Jianan coughed softly. Seeing that his master had noticed, he said loudly, "Master, what junior brother Lu said makes sense. The real person who stole the blueprint has already been locked up in the Regret Pavilion. Why should we waste our time and effort on these useless things?" After being interrupted by Tang Jianan and hearing his words, Sun Xinjing, who was thinking hard, felt even more troubled. He subconsciously turned to look at Zhang Leji and asked, "What do you mean?" Lu Huarong and Tang Jianan's words just now had already alerted Zhang Leji. He knew that Tang Jianan and Lu Huarong wanted to make Yi Xian the real person who stole the blueprint again. Bai Jianmu and his group wanted to make Yi Xian the real person who stole the blueprint. There was no doubt about this. However, Zhang Leji did not believe that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. That was why he defended him. However, it was not because he had a good relationship with Yi Xian, but because Yi Xian knew the location of the blueprint. In Zhang Leji's opinion, it was too arbitrary to assume that Yi Xian stole the blueprint. Therefore, Zhang Leji spoke up for Yi Xian and wanted to find the real person who stole the blueprint. At this moment, after hearing his master's question, Zhang Leji hurriedly cupped his fists and replied, "Master, this disciple thinks that it is too arbitrary to assume that Yi Xian stole the blueprint just because he knew the location of the blueprint. I have already said that Yi Xian has no reason to steal the blueprint. After he stole the blueprint, it would not bring him any benefits. Therefore, this disciple thinks that the blueprint was not stolen by Yi Xian." As soon as Zhang Leji said this, Bai Jianmu sneered and said loudly, "Third senior brother, there will be benefits." Third senior brother, benefits? Isn't the current situation exactly what Yi Xian brought him after stealing the blueprint? After saying this, Bai Jianmu turned around and cupped his fists at Sun Xinjing. "Master, third senior brother always said that Yi Xian would not benefit from stealing the blueprint. However, isn't the current situation good enough for Yi Xian?" Sun Xinjing was stunned when he heard this. He looked at Bai Jianmu and said slowly, "If you have anything to say, just say it. If there's anything you want to say, just say it. Don't hide it." After getting his master's permission, Bai Jianmu continued, "What if I say that Yi Xian didn't steal the drawing for the drawing itself, but to stir up trouble among us through stealing the drawing so that he could benefit from it? Isn't this what everyone is arguing about now? If third senior brother succeeds and finds the other person who stole the blueprint, then wouldn't Yi Xian's plan succeed? His goal is to suppress us brothers. That's his true goal. Bai Jinmu suddenly turned his head to look at Zhang Liji and said with a cold smile, "If Yi Xian wants to do all this by himself, he definitely won't be able to do it. Therefore, he needs help." Bai Jinmu's eyes suddenly widened. He stared at Zhang Liji and said loudly, "Third senior brother, you are his helper. And you, third senior brother, are Yi Xian's helper. Yi Xian is locked up in the Repentance Pavilion and can't carry out his plan. In that case, the rest of the plan will be completed by you. I think all of this was discussed by the two of you back then. You knew that Yi Xian would become a suspect, so you were the one who carried out the plan from the outside." Chapter 204. Bai Jinmu sneered as he looked at Zhang Liji. "Third senior brother, I'm sure this is your true purpose for gathering everyone here." After listening to Bai Jinmu's words, Zhang Liji flew into a rage. Bai Jinmu wanted to convict him and drag him into the water without any evidence. He even said it in such a convincing manner as if it was true. Although Zhang Liji knew that it wasn't the time to be angry, he really couldn't hold it in this state. Looking at the sneering Bai Jinmu, Zhang Liji took a few deep breaths to calm down his anger. When his mood calmed down a little, Zhang Liji pointed at Bai Jinmu and said loudly, "Don't be so arrogant, Bai Jinmu. Bai Jinmu, what evidence do you have to prove that I'm the kind of person you say I am?" Speaking of this, Zhang Liji turned to Sun Xinjing and cupped his fists. "Master, Bai Jinmu has no evidence and thinks that I'm the one who stole the blueprint. Isn't this a little too ridiculous?" After listening to Zhang Liji's words, Sun Xinjing nodded. He also wanted to know if Bai Jinmu had any evidence. If he did, then this matter was over. He could rest assured after he found the blueprint. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jinmu and asked slowly, "Bai Jinmu, do you have any evidence?" Hearing his master's question, Bai Jinmu hurriedly cupped his fists and replied, "Master, although I don't have any evidence, the truth is in front of us. We have to believe it." After hearing Bai Jinmu's words, Zhang Liji said angrily, "Bai Jinmu, what truth? Are your words the truth?" Hearing this, Bai Jinmu shook his head and said slowly, "Third senior brother, I didn't say this. Everyone knows this possibility. I just said it. If you don't believe me, you can ask others." Speaking of this, Bai Jinmu turned to Tang Jinan and winked. When Tang Jinan saw Bai Jinmu's glance, he immediately reacted and cupped his fist. "Master, what Junior Bai said is correct. What he said earlier is something that we all know very well. It's just that we all took into consideration the face of our fellow disciples and did not dare to say it out loud. However, in our hearts we all know very well who did this." When Sun Xinjing heard this, he was stunned. After regaining his senses, he hurriedly asked again, "Really? Does everyone really think so?" After hearing his master's question, Tang Jinan was overjoyed. He knew that some people seemed to believe his words. This was a good sign. Thinking of this, he quickly answered, "Master, it's all true. We are brothers. We know what's going on. But we don't want to say it out loud." When Sun Xinjing heard this, he was somewhat skeptical. His gaze turned to Lu Huarong, who was beside Tang Jinan, and asked, "What about you? Do you think so too?" When Lu Huarong heard his master's question, he answered, "Master, I do think so." Speaking of this, Lu Huarong's heart skipped a beat. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Then, he continued, "Master, I do think so too. I didn't say it before because I still had a glimmer of hope in my heart. I hope that third senior brother will take the initiative to tell the truth and return the blueprint. That way we won't be brothers in vain." At this point, Lu Huarong felt that his words weren't harsh enough, so he stopped talking and turned to Zhang Liji. He cupped his hands and said, "Third senior brother, repent and be saved. Master has taught us for so many years, and we should know how to repay his kindness. As the saying goes, a prodigal who repents is worth more than gold. I think if third senior brother returns the drawing, Master will definitely not punish you severely on account of our past relationship. As long as third senior brother sincerely admits your mistakes, we brothers will definitely not stand by and do nothing. Lu Huarong, that's enough. Before Lu Huarong could finish his long speech, he was interrupted by Zhang Leji, whose face was livid. Looking at Lu Huarong's sincere face, Zhang Leji's lungs were about to explode from anger. Zhang Leji finally understood this Lu Huarong. He was too evil. Among the three of them who unveiled the white cloak, this usually taciturn Lu Huarong was probably the worst. Not only was Lu Huarong bad, but he also had a lot of bad ideas. Every bad thing that Bai Jianmu did, Lu Huarong could make a big fuss about it. Looking at the smile on Lu Huarong's face, Zhang Leji wished he could go up and beat him into a pulp to vent his anger. However, Zhang Leji couldn't make a move because he was very clear that it would be better if he didn't make a move. If he really dared to beat up Lu Huarong, then Bai Jianmu, who was watching from the side, would definitely take advantage of this opportunity to beat him up. At that time, he would probably be crippled by Bai Jianmu before he could do anything to Lu Huarong. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji sighed in his heart. He knew very well that if he wanted to save this situation, he could only rely on his master. There was no other way. He had to make his master believe his words in order to support him. Only then could he change this situation. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji no longer paid any attention to Lu Huarong. Instead, he turned to Sun Xinjing and said loudly, "Master, your disciple didn't steal the blueprint, nor did I collaborate with Yi Xian to steal it. Everything I did was to retrieve the blueprint as soon as possible. Other than that, I have no other intentions." Speaking of this, Zhang Leji cupped his fist and bowed deeply to Sun Xinjing. "Master, please believe your disciple." Looking at Zhang Leji, who bowed to him, Sun Xinjing frowned. Bai Jianmu's words made sense, but Zhang Leji's expression didn't seem to be fake. Then, was this matter true or false? The key point was that without evidence, there was no way to confirm who was the one who stole the blueprint and whose words were true. Sun Xinjing thought for a moment and waved his hand at Zhang Leji. Then, he looked around and said loudly, "Let's go. Everyone, tell me, who stole the blueprint?" After Sun Xinjing asked this question, he sat there quietly and looked at these disciples in front of him. Unfortunately, after a long time, no one answered his question. Seeing that no one answered, Bai Jianmu stepped forward and said, "Master, your disciple believes that this matter is definitely related to Yi Xian." When Sun Xinjing heard this, he asked, "Evidence? There must be evidence to prove that Yi Xian stole it." When Bai Jianmu heard his master's words, he was taken aback at first. Then, he said, "Master, only you and Yi Xian know the location of the blueprint. Isn't that enough evidence?" At this point, Bai Jianmu paused for a moment before he continued. "Master, or are you suspicious of people like us who don't know the location of the blueprint?" Chapter 205. After listening to Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing felt a wave of sadness in his heart. The precious blueprint was lost. Other than himself, Yi Xian was the only one who knew the location of the blueprint. Under such circumstances, other than Yi Xian who could steal the blueprint, there wasn't much of a possibility for anyone else to steal the blueprint. However, did Zhang Leji's words not make sense? There was someone else who was secretly observing him, looking for the location of the blueprint. When this person found the location of the blueprint, he would immediately take action and steal the precious blueprint. Who dared to say that there wasn't such a possibility? However, all of this was just a hypothesis. There wasn't any evidence. So many days had passed and the blueprint still hadn't been found. Could it be that the blueprint that Master spent half his life researching had been lost to the outside world just like that? If this really happened, then wouldn't Master's half of his life's effort have been wasted? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt a wave of sadness in his heart. Master had taught him for so many years. When it was time for him to repay him, was he going to repay him like this? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt a little sour in his heart. A wave of sadness surged into his mind. He had let Master down by losing the blueprint. However, how could these disciples of his be worthy of him? Although the blueprint was expensive, the relationship between master and disciple wasn't as valuable as the blueprint. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing sighed sadly. At this point, if the blueprint belonged to him, then he wouldn't look for it. However, it wasn't an ordinary thing. It was something that Master had spent half his life researching. Sun Xinjing understood that Master wanted to rely on this thing to make the Tianji sect the real number one sect in the world. However, if the blueprint was lost, everything was over. There was silence in the hall. Everyone saw that Sun Xinjing didn't speak, so they didn't dare to speak. They all stared at Master, wanting to hear what decision he would make. After a long time, Sun Xinjing raised his head and looked at everyone in front of him. After a long time, he spoke slowly. Now, no matter who it is, they have to be interrogated. We have to find the person who might be the thief and then distinguish them. Zhang Leji was overjoyed when he heard Sun Xinjing's words. The meaning behind his master's words was the same as what he had just said. He was going to start an official investigation. No matter who it was, they had to be interrogated. Hearing this news, the faces of Bai Jianmu and the others changed, and they cursed inwardly. Bai Jianmu knew that if he followed his master's words, everything would return to the starting point. According to Zhang Leji's words, he would start the investigation from eldest senior brother LV Wenkong. Just like before, Tang Jianan was asked to be the first to answer these questions. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu already knew that something was wrong, but there was nothing he could do. This was because this was an order personally given by Sun Xinjing, and no one else could change it. Unless there was some real reason or evidence to prove that someone was the one who stole the blueprint. Only then could Sun Xinjing change his mind. But where was there any evidence? If there was evidence, Bai Jianmu would have taken it out long ago. Why would he wait until now? Sun Xinjing's words made the person who was most worried, not Bai Jianmu, but Tang Jianan. Tang Jianan was very clear that if he followed his master's words, he would still face the same problem as before. Was eldest senior brother LV Wenkong suspected of stealing the blueprint? This question was Tang Jianan's nightmare. He knew very well what would happen if he answered. But even if he didn't want to answer, his master had already spoken. He had no way to resist. But if he answered, they would be completely defeated. Tang Jianan was also very clear of the consequences of failure. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan hurriedly turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu. He knew that Bai Jianmu had always been a scheming person. At this critical moment, it depended on whether he could come up with an idea or not. Tang Jianan turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu. After seeing him clearly, his heart instantly turned cold. Bai Jianmu lowered his head and had a distressed look on his face. Upon seeing this scene, cold sweat instantly appeared on Tang Jianan's forehead. If even Bai Jianmu had no idea, this matter would truly be difficult to handle. The key was that the first person to face this problem wasn't Bai Jianmu but him. Now, Bai Jianmu didn't give him any hints. This meant that the answer to this matter had to be thought of by himself. However, if he could really think of a solution, why would Tang Jianan be so worried here? Seeing that Bai Jianmu had no idea, Tang Jianan felt a little disappointed. But suddenly, his heart stirred and he hurriedly turned his head to look at Lu Huarong. This junior brother Lu had really brought him too many surprises today. He didn't expect that someone who was originally taciturn would be so powerful once he erupted. Tang Jianan, who was filled with anticipation, turned his head to look at Lu Huarong. As expected, he didn't see any panic on Lu Huarong's face. In fact, there was even a faint confidence in his eyes. Upon seeing this scene, Tang Jian'an's nervous mood suddenly relaxed a lot. After Sun Xinjing said that sentence, he waited for a while. Seeing that no one answered, he asked again, "Do you guys have any ideas? If not, then do as I said just now." Upon hearing this, everyone was stunned again. They glanced at each other, wanting to see what the other party meant. Seeing that no one spoke, Bai Jianmu secretly sighed. He knew that these people were unreliable. At the crucial moment, he still had to rely on himself. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu gritted his teeth. Just as he was about to speak, Lu Huarong suddenly stepped forward and clasped his fists. "Master, I think that even if we are to investigate, we should start from the most suspicious person." Sun Xinjing, who was waiting for everyone to answer, didn't expect that the first person to speak would actually be Lu Huarong. In his impression, this disciple was honest, loyal, and taciturn. Ever since he entered the sect, he only knew how to cultivate every day and didn't participate in anything. Hence, he basically didn't speak much. However, today it was as if he was a different person. No one spoke, but Lu Huarong beat them to it. Upon seeing this scene, Sun Xinjing couldn't help but blink, wanting to see if he had seen wrongly. After a while, Sun Xinjing waved his hand and said slowly, "Lu Huarong, what do you mean? Just say it clearly and let everyone study it." After hearing his master's answer, Lu Huarong said loudly, "Now that the blueprint is lost, I think that the most important thing for us to do now is to not waste any time. The most important thing is to find the blueprint as soon as possible." At this point, Lu Huarong paused for a while before continuing. "What I want to say is that in order to find the blueprint as soon as possible, we should start from the most suspicious person." Chapter 206. After listening to Lu Huarong's words, Bai Jianmu finally understood what Lu Huarong meant. Now, it was needless to say who was the biggest suspect. Everyone was very clear about this. The biggest suspect was, of course, Yi Xian, who knew the location of the blueprint. As long as they started investigating Yi Xian, then this matter would be much easier to handle. It didn't matter whether Yi Xian admitted to it or not. If Yi Xian admitted that he was the one who stole the blueprint, he would be directly expelled from the sect. There would be no room for a comeback. Even if Yi Xian didn't admit to it, it didn't matter. He would continue to be locked up in the Repentance Pavilion and wait for him to admit to it. In other words, the most suspicious person was Yi Xian. Then, the second most suspicious person was, of course, Zhang Liji. Others didn't know the location of the blueprint. Although Zhang Liji didn't know, it was very suspicious that his good friend Yi Xian wouldn't tell him the location of the blueprint. Therefore, Zhang Liji was the second person to be suspected. Next, the third person to be suspected at any time wasn't much of a problem. Because no matter what happened, at least Tang Jianan didn't have to answer Zhang Liji's question. If he didn't answer that question, eldest senior brother LV Wenkong wouldn't stand on Yi Xian's side. Zhang Liji's side was still weaker than his side. This was the biggest advantage. After hearing Lu Huarong's words, Tang Jianan was completely relieved. As long as he didn't have to answer Zhang Liji's question, then all the questions could be solved. Tang Jianan knew that he should also say something to make this matter work. Lu Huarong's words alone probably didn't carry enough weight. Thinking of this, Tang Jianan was about to speak when Bai Jianmu stood up and spoke first. "Master, what junior brother Lu said makes sense. In order to save time and find the blueprint as soon as possible, we should start questioning the biggest suspect. This way we can find the blueprint in the shortest time." After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Tang Jianan didn't dare to delay and hurriedly said, "Master, if we don't hurry up and find the blueprint, the consequences will be unimaginable once it gets out." After hearing their words, Zhang Liji secretly cursed them for being shameless. So many days had passed, but they did not seem to be in a hurry to find the blueprints. However, once their interests were involved, they jumped out in the name of finding the blueprints. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji knew that he could no longer remain silent. According to what Lu Huarong said, the most suspicious people were definitely Yi Xian and himself. If they were to interrogate her and Yi Xian first, then the situation would be the same as it had been in the beginning. In the end, they might just lock Yi Xian up in the penitence pavilion, and everything would return to normal. Zhang Leji didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly said, "Master, before we find the blueprint, I think that everyone is suspicious. As for who is the most suspicious, no one can say for sure. Therefore, I think that we should start from the beginning and investigate one by one." This time, before Sun Xinjing could answer, Bai Jianmu already spoke first. "Third senior brother, what you said is wrong. In order to save time, shouldn't we interrogate the most suspicious person first? If we do as you said and investigate one by one, how long will it take? I'm afraid that the blueprint will have already been leaked out before you can find it." At this point, Bai Jianmu paused and sneered. Then, he looked at Zhang Leji and asked in a loud voice, "Third senior brother, what you said is very suspicious." When Zhang Leji heard Bai Jianmu's words, he said angrily, "Bai Jianmu, what is suspicious about what I said? Can you explain it clearly?" Bai Jianmu sneered, "Third senior brother, are you planning to take advantage of the time when we're investigating others to send the drawings out?" As soon as he said that, Zhang Leji was so angry that he almost jumped up. Bai Jianmu's words were already very obvious. The blueprints were stolen by Zhang Leji. The purpose of checking them one by one was just that Zhang Leji wanted to take advantage of this period of time to send out the stolen blueprints. Zhang Leji stretched out a trembling hand and pointed it at Bai Jianmu. He rebuked angrily, "Bai Jianmu, this is a serious matter. Why are you spouting nonsense and framing senior brother? What are your intentions? Are you saying that you stole the blueprint and that's why you're framing me?" After hearing Zhang Leji's words, Bai Jianmu sneered. "Third senior brother, you said that I stole the blueprint. How am I supposed to steal it? I don't even know where the blueprint is kept. How am I supposed to steal it? On the other hand, third senior brother, with Yi Xian's help, it's easy for you to steal the blueprint. Tell me, between the two of us, who's the more suspicious one?" Zhang Leji said angrily, "Why would Yi Xian help me steal the blueprint? What reason does he have to do that? Junior brother Bai, on the other hand, if you stole the blueprint and framed Yi Xian, then you're trying to drag me down with you. If your plan succeeds, you'll be able to take the helm effortlessly. Bai Jianmu, did I say anything wrong? Only you will be able to obtain the greatest benefits after stealing that blueprint. Bai Jianmu, the truth is right in front of you. What else do you have to say?" After hearing Zhang Leji's words, Bai Jianmu clapped his hands. He looked at Zhang Leji and sneered. "Third senior brother, what you said is wrong. If I stole the blueprint and framed Yi Xian, I could become the leader." At this point, Bai Jianmu suddenly stopped smiling and shouted sternly, "Third senior brother, don't you have the same goal? You stole the blueprint and then wanted to frame me. In the end, do you think the benefits you get are smaller than mine? Third senior brother, don't forget that I don't know where Master put the blueprint, but you can find out through Yi Xian. Tell me, between the two of us, who's the bigger suspect?" After Zhang Leji heard Bai Jianmu's words, he felt relieved. He asked, "Bai Jianmu, since you know that even if I steal the blueprint, I won't be able to become a branch leader, then why would I steal it? Since I can't become a branch leader, why would I take such a big risk?" At this point, Zhang Leji sneered again and continued, "Bai Jianmu, you're different from me. As long as you steal the blueprint, you'll be able to become a branch leader after a simple operation. In this case, tell me, who's more suspicious between the two of us?" Bai Jianmu laughed out loud when he heard that. "Third senior brother, I've already said that I don't know where Master placed the blueprints. Why don't you tell me how I'm going to steal the blueprints? You even said that it's a simple operation. How am I supposed to operate during this time? When I found out that the blueprint was missing, everything was up to Master. No one else could say anything. How am I supposed to operate then? Chapter 207. Bai Jianmu looked at Zhang Leji and sneered. Third senior brother, why don't you tell me how I should handle this matter? After Zhang Leji heard Bai Jianmu's words, he carefully recalled the situation back then and realized that everything seemed to have been decided by his master. After discovering that the blueprint had been stolen, his master had gathered everyone. After a series of discussions, his master had resolutely locked Yi Xian up in the Repentance Pavilion. Things were that simple. His master had been the one giving the orders throughout the entire process. The others had only given some suggestions. Suggestions? Zhang Leji's eyes suddenly lit up when he thought of suggestions. Although Bai Jianmu didn't directly accuse Yi Xian of being the one who stole the blueprint, his every suggestion to his master was secretly pointing the finger at Yi Xian. Zhang Leji raised his head to look at Bai Jianmu and sneered. Bai Jianmu, although you didn't directly say that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint, your every word was hinting that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. What difference is there between your actions and directly saying that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint? Bai Jianmu's expression changed slightly when he heard Zhang Leji's words, but he quickly returned to normal. After Bai Jianmu calmed down, he raised his head and looked at Zhang Leji. He sneered and said, Third senior brother, what you said is wrong. Such a big thing has happened to the sect. How can we, as disciples, not care about this matter? We can only tell our master what we know and let him make a decision. We didn't deliberately target anyone. Is that wrong? Zhang Leji shook his head after hearing Bai Jianmu's words. Bai Jianmu, you're right. With such a big thing happening in the sect, we should do our best to help our master find the blueprint. We should also tell him what we know. However, Bai Jianmu, think about it carefully. Every word you said hinted that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. What you did was clearly hinting to our master that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint. After listening to Zhang Leji's words, Bai Jianmu didn't get angry. He just clapped his hands towards Zhang Leji and laughed. Third senior brother, I only had a little doubt about you at first, but now I'm more and more suspicious of you. That day, when the master called everyone over, everyone said the same thing. Because Yi Xian was indeed the only one who knew the location of the master's drawing. How could they not suspect such a suspicious person, but suspect a person who did not know the location of the master's drawing instead? Third senior brother, it's a little too obvious that you're speaking up for Yi Xian. I can't help but suspect that you're in cahoots with Yi Xian to steal the blueprint and then trying to frame me for it. Bai Jianmu snorted coldly at this point. His gaze turned sharp as he looked at Zhang Leji. Third senior brother, you've got a good idea. By doing this, not only did you get the blueprint, but you also got rid of all of us who were in the way. You're really killing two birds with one stone. After Sun Xinjing heard Zhang Leji's words, his eyes lit up. He recalled the first time he gathered all the disciples. At that time, after he announced that the blueprint was stolen, he carefully observed the expressions of all the disciples, trying to find the person who stole the blueprint. Sun Xinjing thought that no matter who stole the blueprint, their expressions would definitely be different after being exposed. However, Sun Xinjing was disappointed. No, he didn't find anything. Everyone's expression was dumbfounded. None of them had a guilty conscience. Sun Xinjing didn't find anything. He had no choice but to tell the disciples about it and let them analyze it. In the end, they concluded that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. This was because there was only one person who knew where the blueprint was placed, and that was Yi Xian. The others didn't know where the blueprint was placed. Naturally, they weren't suspicious. Sun Xinjing remembered very clearly that when everyone identified Yi Xian as the person who stole the blueprint, Yi Xian tried his best to deny it. He even swore an oath to prove that he wasn't the person who stole the blueprint. However, all of this was useless because no one knew where the blueprint was placed. Even if they wanted to steal it, they couldn't do it. Although Sun Xinjing didn't believe that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint and suspected that someone was secretly investigating the location of the blueprint, all the disciples pointed out that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. This made him suspect Yi Xian. It was also because of this reason that Sun Xinjing locked Yi Xian in the Repentance Pavilion. Sun Xinjing, you remember very clearly that Zhang Liji didn't say much at that time. He only said a few words because he wanted to prove that Yi Xian wasn't the person who stole the blueprint. Sun Xinjing was also very clear about what Bai Jianmu was doing at that time. Bai Jianmu never said that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. Every word he said was to ask for everyone's opinion. Then, he followed everyone's opinion and expressed what he wanted to say. It could be said that Bai Jianmu didn't have his own opinion at that time, nor did he have his own suggestions. All of his suggestions were based on what everyone said and summed up. However, everyone's conclusion was that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. When Zhang Liji looked for Sun Xinjing and expressed his opinion, Sun Xinjing agreed without hesitation. This was because even though all the disciples pointed out that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint, Sun Xinjing still had some doubts in his heart. That was why Sun Xinjing agreed without hesitation. But now, things had turned out like this. Bai Jianmu and Zhang Liji were at each other's throats. Neither of them was willing to back down. Bai Jianmu was certain that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint. He even suspected that Zhang Liji was also in contact with Yi Xian. That was why he tried so hard to defend Yi Xian. Zhang Liji's thoughts were completely different from Bai Jianmu's. He still believed that Yi Xian had no reason to steal the blueprint. Naturally, he wouldn't steal it. Now, in the midst of everyone's debate, these two suggestions were the main ones. So, whose words were to be trusted? Sun Xinjing carefully thought about the meaning of the two people's words. He felt that both of them made a lot of sense. Bai Jianmu's claim that Yi Xian was the person who stole the blueprint was reasonable. Because Yi Xian knew the location where the blueprint was kept, he would steal it if he had the chance. Even though Yi Xian would be the next branch master if there were no accidents, Bai Jianmu also gave an answer to this question. Yi Xian could use the opportunity of stealing the blueprint to eliminate his opponent. Even though he had the highest chance of becoming the branch master, nothing was certain. Who could guarantee that there wouldn't be any changes? Therefore, only by eliminating all of his opponents would he have a 100% chance of becoming the branch master. Chapter 208. Bai Jianmu's words made sense. Not only did he think that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint, but he also thought that Zhang Liji and Yi Xian were accomplices. The reason was that if Yi Xian stole the blueprint, he would definitely be suspected because he was the only one who knew the location of the blueprint. Moreover, Yi Xian had also guessed that he would be locked up in the Repentance Pavilion because of this matter. In that case, he could not complete this plan alone. Therefore, he had to find a helper. No matter who it was, if he wanted to find a helper, he would definitely look for his best friend. Zhang Liji was Yi Xian's best friend. Everyone in the South County branch knew this. Once Yi Xian was locked up in the Repentance Pavilion because of this matter, then the rest of the matter would be completed by Zhang Liji. This also explained why Zhang Liji still tried his best to speak up for Yi Xian even though he was so suspicious. He even did not hesitate to turn against his fellow disciples to speak up for Yi Xian. This possibility was not impossible. Not only that, but it was also quite likely. Zhang Liji accused Bai Jianmu of stealing the blueprint, and his reason was very good. Bai Jianmu's attainments in the art of mechanisms were very high. Although everyone ranked him a little lower than Yi Xian in their hearts, no one knew his true strength. However, Sun Xinjing knew very well that Bai Jianmu was very talented. Although he entered the sect a few years later than Yi Xian, his attainments in the art of mechanisms were almost the same as Yi Xian's. Under such circumstances, if Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and used this as an excuse to frame Yi Xian, as long as Yi Xian was locked up, Bai Jianmu might become the leader. This was definitely true. Although Zhang Leji's attainments in the art of mechanisms were not bad, he was still far inferior to Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu. However, other than Yi Xian and Bai Jianmu, Zhang Leji's engineering skills could be considered the third best. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing still couldn't make up his mind. Who was the one who stole the blueprint? Everyone's words made sense, making it difficult for him to make a decision. There was a possibility that Yi Xian would steal the blueprint and use it to get rid of his opponent. It was the same for Bai Jianmu. He could steal the blueprint and eliminate his greatest enemy. These two possibilities made Sun Xinjing hesitate for a moment. He did not know who the real thief was. Just as Sun Xinjing was deep in thought, he heard Zhang Leji shouting at Bai Jianmu. Bai Jianmu, I've already made it very clear. This matter has nothing to do with me. Stop spouting nonsense. Bai Jianmu sneered. Third senior brother, why don't you tell me? You and Yi Xian are good friends. If he didn't tell you the location of the blueprint, would he tell me? Haha, this is really funny. After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Leji suppressed his anger and said, Bai Jianmu, if you were Yi Xian, would you tell me the location of the blueprint? Don't forget, once Yi Xian becomes the branch leader, that secret room will be his personal secret room. If it were you, would you tell such a secret to your good friend? After hearing Zhang Leji's words, Bai Jianmu was stunned. After a moment, he reacted and secretly cursed himself for being careless. No matter how good Zhang Leji's relationship with Yi Xian was, Yi Xian might not necessarily tell Zhang Leji about such a secret. Zhang Leji was right about this. If he were Yi Xian, he definitely wouldn't tell anyone either. This was because only the branch leader knew about that secret room. If Yi Xian became the branch leader, that secret room would become his personal secret. However, if Yi Xian told Zhang Leji about that secret room, then even if Yi Xian became the branch leader, what would he do to Zhang Leji? This was because Zhang Leji also knew about that secret room. At that time, what would Yi Xian do? Would he still keep the good stuff in that secret room? But doing so would be too dangerous. Or should he build another secret room? But if he did that, wouldn't it be too obvious? This would prove that the loss of the blueprint back then was definitely related to him. Even if Yi Xian became the branch leader, don't forget that he wasn't the boss of the Tianji sect. There was still the boss of the Tianji sect, Fang Tianji, who was in charge of everyone. Once this matter was discovered by others and reached Fang Tianji's ears, it would definitely be very unlucky. Therefore, for the sake of safety, Bai Jianmu was certain that Yi Xian wouldn't tell anyone about the location of the secret room. Zhang Leji asked loudly as he looked at Bai Jianmu, who was standing there with his head lowered. Bai Jianmu, what else do you have to say? I've already told you that Yi Xian would never tell me the location of the secret room. How could we be partners? The reason why I spoke up for Yi Xian is because I think that just because Yi Xian knows the location of the blueprint, it's too unfair to assume that the blueprint was stolen. Other than that, I don't have any other thoughts. After hearing Zhang Leji's words, Bai Jianmu was speechless for a moment. Just as Bai Jianmu was having a headache, Tang Jianan suddenly spoke up from the side. Third junior brother, even if Yi Xian didn't tell you the location of the blueprint, you could still be his partner. Zhang Leji was stunned when he heard this. He hadn't expected Tang Jianan, who had always been quiet, to suddenly criticize him. Zhang Leji was furious. He turned around abruptly and looked at Tang Jianan beside him. He said angrily, "Second senior brother, I didn't know where to put the blueprint today. How did I become Yi Xian's accomplice?" Tang Jianan waved his hand when he heard Zhang Leji's words. He sneered and said, "Third junior brother, even if you didn't know the location of the blueprint, you could still be Yi Xian's partner." Speaking of this, Tang Jian'an's tone paused before he continued. "That's because you don't need to know the location of the blueprint. Yi Xian can steal the blueprint alone. You just need to stay outside and finish what he needs to do. That's all." When Zhang Liji heard Tang Jian'an's words, he couldn't help but laugh. He pointed at Tang Jian'an and said with a cold smile, "Second senior brother, why don't you tell me what benefits I'll get if I become Yi Xian's accomplice? If Yi Xian can become the branch leader through this matter, then why should I help him? What does the success of this matter have to do with me? What reason do I have to help him? Second senior brother, why don't you tell me why I'm doing this?" After Tang Jian'an heard Zhang Liji's answer, he suddenly sighed and nodded. Then, he slowly said, "Third junior brother, to put it bluntly, no matter what happens, you won't have the chance to become a branch leader." Zhang Liji sneered when he heard Tang Jian'an's words. "Second senior brother, since you already know that, why are you still doubting me?" Chapter 209. Hearing Zhang Liji's question, Tang Jian'an sighed again. "Third junior brother, I think you know this very well. No matter what you do, the position of branch leader will not fall into your hands. Therefore, your real goal is not the position of branch leader, but that blueprint." Speaking up to this point, Tang Jian'an paused for a moment before continuing. "After this matter succeeds, Yi Xian will be able to become the branch leader as he wishes, and you will be able to obtain that blueprint. I think this is the reason why you two are working together." After hearing Tang Jian'an's words, Zhang Liji immediately flew into a rage. He pointed at Tang Jian'an and said angrily, "Second senior brother, don't talk nonsense. How could I have such thoughts? The matter of the blueprint is naturally decided by Master. As his disciples, we naturally have to listen to him. Second senior brother, you shouldn't have said that." Hearing Zhang Liji's words, Tang Jian'an sighed and said slowly, "Third junior brother, I don't want to think this way, but the facts are right in front of me. I have no choice but to think this way." Hearing this, Zhang Liji said angrily, "What facts? What can prove that I am in cahoots with Yi Xian?" This time, without waiting for Tang Jian'an to speak, Bai Jianmu spoke first. "Third senior brother, isn't the evidence now obvious enough? Yi Xian stole the blueprint. He knows that he will be locked up in the Repentance Pavilion, so he has to find someone to do things for him outside. And that person is you, third senior brother." Looking at Bai Jianmu's smug smile, Zhang Liji took a few deep breaths to calm his agitated mood and calm himself down a little. Zhang Liji knew that he couldn't go along with Bai Jianmu and Tang Jian'an's words anymore. If he continued, he would definitely fall into their trap. If he wanted to change this situation, he had to find another way. Thinking up to this point, Zhang Liji suddenly turned his head to Sun Xinjing and cupped his fist. He said loudly, "Master, time is of the essence now. This disciple thinks that it is better to investigate this matter clearly. The longer we delay, the greater the possibility of that blueprint being leaked out. Therefore, Master, please give the order to investigate this matter immediately." After Bai Jianmu heard Zhang Liji's words, he secretly scolded Zhang Liji for being so cunning. If his master agreed to his request, wouldn't that mean that everything would go back to square one? Tang Jian'an would have to answer his eldest senior brother, LV Wenkong, whether or not he had the intention to steal the blueprint. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu hurriedly cupped his fists at Sun Xinjing and said loudly, "Master, I think that it is precisely because of the urgency of time that we have to investigate the most suspicious people first. This way we can find the blueprint in the shortest time possible." Seeing that Bai Jianmu had spoken, Tang Jian'an didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly stepped forward and cupped his fist. "Master, the matter of the blueprint is of great importance, so we must hurry up and not delay. When Lu Huarong saw that Bai Jianmu and Tang Jianan had already spoken, it wouldn't be good if he didn't say anything. He could only take a step forward, clasped his fist at Sun Xinjing, and said loudly, "Master, I believe that if we want to save time, we must choose the right method. Investigating the most suspicious people first should be the most time-saving method. I hope that Master will agree." Seeing that his three opponents had already spoken, Zhang Liji hurriedly added, "Master, saving time isn't for the sake of random investigations. In my opinion, investigating this case should be like practicing the art of mechanisms. You have to do it step by step to do the right thing. Therefore, this disciple believes that it is better to investigate one by one in order to be fair and accurate. Only after investigating everyone can we determine who is the most suspicious person. If we just make wild guesses, it will definitely not be accurate. Therefore, we must investigate once before we can truly know the truth." After hearing Zhang Liji's words, Bai Jianmu was a little anxious. Even Bai Jianmu felt that Zhang Liji's words made sense. To do something, one must start from the beginning. On the surface, it seemed to take a lot of time. However, if one started from the middle, it would definitely make things more chaotic. Not only that, it would waste even more time. Since what he heard made sense, Bai Jianmu knew that only by saying something more reasonable could he overshadow Zhang Liji's reasoning. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu couldn't help but frown. After a moment, his eyes suddenly lit up. He hurriedly clasped his fist at Sun Xinjing again, and said loudly, "Master, after the blueprint was stolen, Yi Xian was locked up in the Repentance Pavilion. I think that if he stole the blueprint, we should be able to find it in his residence." Sun Xinjing listened to Bai Jianmu's words, but shook his head and said slowly, "No need. I've already sent people to search, and they didn't find anything." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Liji was overjoyed. He hurriedly said, "Master, since we didn't receive the blueprint from Yi Xian's residence, I don't think he stole it. Master, please investigate thoroughly." This time, without waiting for Sun Xinjing to answer, Bai Jianmu spoke first. "Master, if Yi Xian stole the blueprint, such a precious blueprint would definitely not be placed in a place where others could find it. He would definitely put it in a place where others couldn't find it. Therefore, disciple thinks that we should investigate carefully." Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu turned his head and glanced at Zhang Liji before continuing, "Disciple thinks that we should investigate third senior brother's residence more, especially." As soon as Bai Jianmu's voice fell, Tang Jianan hurriedly said, "Yes, master. Since Yi Xian might have told third junior brother the location of the blueprint, then it's very likely that he put the stolen blueprint with third junior brother." Seeing that the two of them wanted to search his residence, Zhang Liji couldn't help but be furious. Just as he was about to refute, Lu Huarong beat him to it and spoke first. "Master, disciple thinks that second senior brother and fifth senior brother's words make sense. After Yi Xian stole the blueprint, he knew that he would be suspected. For safety reasons, he would definitely hide the blueprint in a place that we wouldn't expect. Then, wouldn't third senior brother's residence be the safest place?" After hearing the three of them, Zhang Liji suddenly flew into a rage. He suddenly shouted, "That's enough! Why are you suspecting me? Don't you have any suspicions? If you want to search, fine. Then we'll search all of the residences and see from whom we can find the blueprint." After hearing Zhang Liji's words, Bai Jianmu clapped his hands and sneered, "In that case, we'll listen to third senior brother." Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu turned his head and looked at Sun Xinjing. He cupped his fists and said, "Master, since third senior brother proposed to search everyone's residences, disciple agrees. Let's search everyone's rooms." Chapter 210. Bai Jianmu paused and cupped his fists at Sun Xinjing before continuing. "Master, if you want to search his residence, I suggest that you search third senior brother's residence first. Hearing this, Sun Xinjing asked curiously, Why? Bai Jianmu replied, Because I think that third senior brother is the most suspicious. If Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint and we didn't find it in Yi Xian's residence, then I have reason to believe that Yi Xian hid the blueprint in third senior brother's residence after stealing it. The blueprint is of great importance. In order to save time, I think we should search third senior brother's residence first. Sun Xinjing thought for a moment after hearing Bai Jianmu's suggestion. He then looked up at Zhang Leji without saying a word. Zhang Leji saw his master looking at him and quickly replied, Master, I have no objections. In order to prove that he was not a suspect, Zhang Leji had nothing to be afraid of even if they were to search his residence. After all, he was the one who knew his residence best. Zhang Leji naturally knew whether there was a blueprint in his residence or not. Bai Jianmu sneered when he saw that Zhang Leji had agreed. All right then, master. In order to prevent anyone from cheating, we should hide the blueprint first. I suggest that we set off immediately and search third senior brother's residence. Sun Xinjing nodded when he heard that. He also understood that since they were going to search third senior brother's residence, they had to do it immediately. Otherwise, the person who stole the blueprint would be on guard and would definitely move the blueprint away as soon as possible. By then, it would not be so easy to find the blueprint again. Sun Xinjing nodded when he thought of this. All right then, let's set off immediately. Since Sun Xinjing had agreed, everyone walked out of the main hall and headed to Zhang Leji's residence. Soon, they arrived at Zhang Leji's residence. As soon as they entered, they saw two young men sitting in the living room. Seeing Zhang Meng and Zhang Qiuming, Zhang Leji suddenly remembered that he still had two people with him. Zhang Leji didn't dare to neglect him. After all, according to what Zhang Meng said, he should be a big client. Such a person couldn't be neglected. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji hurriedly walked to Zhang Meng and Zhang Qiuming, cupped his fists and said, Two young masters, I've made you wait for a long time. Let me introduce you. After saying this, Zhang Leji turned to look at Sun Xinjing and said, Master, these two have come to the mountain to do something important. After that, Zhang Leji introduced them to each other. After exchanging some pleasantries with each other, they sat back down. After everyone was seated, Bai Jianmu looked at the two young people in the hall. After he felt that they were not a threat, he stood up and clasped his fist at Sun Xinjing. Master, there's no time to lose. We should search as soon as possible in case. Bai Jianmu paused. However, although he didn't finish his sentence, everyone understood what he meant. In Zhang Leji's residence, there were naturally several disciples of Zhang Leji. If these disciples took the blueprint away when no one was paying attention, everyone would have come in vain. Sun Xinjing naturally understood this. Since he agreed to search their residence, it meant that he had made up his mind to check carefully. Naturally, he couldn't let others take the blueprint away in advance. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing waved his hand at his disciples and said loudly, Okay, you guys split up and search. As soon as Sun Xinjing finished speaking, Bai Jianmu had already said, Master, this is really inappropriate. If we split up, wouldn't it give people the possibility of cheating? After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing was stunned at first. Then, he reacted and said, In that case, you guys split into 3 groups and search separately. Hearing this, Bai Jianmu was even more delighted. He quickly clasped his fist and said, Yes, master. After hearing Sun Xinjing's instructions, everyone didn't dare to delay. They each found people they trusted and formed a group. LV Wenkong and Tang Jinan were in a group. Zhang Leji and Mei Guangji were in a group. Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong were in a group. As for Li Xueyan, she stayed in the hall. Since they were divided into groups, everyone walked in different directions. After everyone left, only Sun Xinjing, Zhang Meng, Zhang Qiuming, and Li Xueyan were left in the hall. After hearing Zhang Liji's introduction, Sun Xinjing already knew that these two young people wanted to build a house, so he asked casually. Young masters, may I know which young master wants to build a house? Zhang Meng had always had the virtue of respecting the old and loving the young. After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, he quickly stood up and clasped his fist and said, It's me. I want to build a house. Sun Xinjing quickly waved his hand at Zhang Meng and said with a smile, Young master, don't be so polite. Please sit down and talk. Speaking of this, Sun Xinjing was a little thirsty. He picked up the tea on the table and took a sip. Then, he asked, Prince Zhang, what kind of house do you want to build? Zhang Meng thought about how to answer. The person in front of him was the leader of the Tianji sect in the entire South County. He was definitely the most experienced. In addition, Zhang Meng didn't know much about building houses. He came here to ask these experts to design a magnificent auction house for him. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng said, I want to build a super large auction house. Do you have any suggestions? Auction house? After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing was stunned. Then, he carefully looked at Zhang Meng. He felt even more strange in his heart. He asked with some doubt. You want to build an auction house? Zhang Meng nodded. Yes. Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Meng's clothes again and said again. If you want to build an auction house, it will cost a lot. Because ordinary houses only need to build secret rooms and mechanisms, but an auction house is different. Because the things auctioned in an auction house are all precious things, so in terms of safety, it must be guaranteed. Not only must there be secret rooms that are difficult to crack, but all places must be safe. It can be said that a real auction house is a large secret room. This is definitely not an exaggeration. At this point, Sun Xinjing stopped because he felt that it was useless to say this. The young man in front of him obviously didn't know how to build an auction house. Naturally, he didn't know how to build an auction house. Looking at the young man's clothes, Sun Xinjing even suspected that this young man had never been to an auction house before. It was useless to talk too much about an auction house with such a person. The key was that after this person knew the cost of building an auction house. Chapter 211. Sun Xinjing wasn't sure if Zhang Meng would still build an auction house if he knew how much it would cost. Thus, no matter how much he explained, it would be useless. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing simplified all the questions. In the end, he simplified them into one sentence. Young master, if you want to build an ordinary auction house, you will need a lot of money. I wonder how much money you are willing to spend to build an auction house? After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng thought for a while but couldn't think of an answer. He had no choice but to turn to Zhang Qiuming and ask, Prince Zhang, if I want to build the largest auction house, how much money would it cost? After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Zhang Liji's heart couldn't help but tremble. Until now, he still didn't believe that Zhang Liji would be able to see such a large auction house. Sun Xinjing was right. An auction house, no matter how many buildings and buildings there were, in the eyes of a mechanical engineer, it was a whole. A mechanical engineer had to come up with the most reasonable plan on the whole and design it into the safest place. Although Zhang Qiuming wasn't sure how much it would cost, he was sure that it would be an astronomical figure. After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Zhang Qiuming thought for a while before leaning over to Zhang Meng's ear and whispering, The fierce brothers, it's not good for us to guess. Why don't we ask branch leader Sun and things will be clear? After hearing Zhang Qiuming's words, Zhang Meng nodded and turned to Sun Xinjing and asked, Branch leader Sun, if I want to build the largest auction house in the world, how much money would it cost? After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing's eyes widened. After a while, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. These young people thought that building an auction house was as simple as building their own house. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing said, I don't know how much it costs to enter the world's largest auction house because I don't know which auction house is the world's largest. At this point, Sun Xinjing paused for a moment and pondered for a moment before continuing. There's an auction house in South County City. The scale of the auction house isn't small. When he built it, we didn't participate. We only modified the security system for him later. Just this modification alone cost 300,000 gold coins. At this point, Sun Xinjing saw that Zhang Meng's eyes had turned from calm to shock. He stopped talking because he thought that there was no need to continue. The 300,000 gold coins had already frightened Zhang Meng. Zhang Meng heard Sun Xinjing say this and did not continue. He quickly asked, "Division Leader Sun, is this auction house in South County very big in terms of specifications?" Sun Xinjing shook his head. The auction house at home can only be considered a medium-sized auction house. Only the Wealth Auction House in the Central County can be considered a large-scale auction house. Zhang Meng's eyes lit up after hearing Sun Xinjing's words. He thought for a moment and asked, "The renovation cost of this auction house in South County is 300,000 gold coins. If we calculate everything, 1 million gold coins should be enough." Sun Xinjing nodded after hearing Zhang Meng's question. "It doesn't need 1 million gold coins. About 600,000 gold coins should be enough." Hearing this, Zhang Meng clapped his hands and said with a smile, "If that's the case, with 5 million gold coins, we should be able to build the largest auction house." Sun Xinjing's heart skipped a beat after hearing Zhang Meng's words. He glanced at Zhang Meng again, shook his head slightly, and said casually, "It should be enough." Zhang Meng nodded in satisfaction after hearing Sun Xinjing's answer. He said loudly, "In that case, if we use 10 million gold coins, we should be able to build the largest auction house in the world." Sun Xinjing was stunned when he heard this. Could it be that this young man in ordinary clothes really had 10 million gold coins? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing asked tentatively, "Prince Zhang, are you really going to use 10 million gold coins to build an auction house?" Zhang Meng nodded after hearing Sun Xinjing's question. "Yes." Sun Xinjing and Zhang Qiuming were both shocked after hearing Zhang Meng's words. Although Zhang Qiuming's father was the castellan, it would be difficult for him to take out 10 million gold coins. In addition, Zhang Qiuming knew Zhang Meng very well. Half a month ago, Zhang Meng still wanted to work to earn money. But now, he wanted to take out 10 million gold coins to build an auction house. Wasn't this a bit too ridiculous? Zhang Qiuming also knew that Zhang Meng had the nightmare eagle's feathers, but how much could they be sold for? Even if he had enough feathers to make 10 black feather cloaks, how much could they be sold for? It was still a far cry from 10 million gold coins. However, looking at Zhang Meng's current expression, it didn't seem like he was faking it. He was serious about it. Sun Xinjing was even more shocked. 10 million gold coins was definitely not a small amount. In the entire Anwu Empire, the number of people who could take out 10 million gold coins could be counted on one hand. Even if someone could take out 10 million gold coins, why would they build an auction house? Could it be that building an auction house was very profitable? Or could it be that they could quickly earn back the 10 million gold coins? This was impossible. Auction houses were indeed very profitable, but many of the items auctioned were not from the auction house. They were items that were put up for auction by others. These items could be sold for a good price, but after all, these good items were not from the auction house. The money they earned was only the handling fee. In addition, who could guarantee that everyone would go to the auction house to buy things? If no one went to the auction house to buy things, it wouldn't take long for the auction house to close down. Another expense of the auction house was staff. In addition to some of the auction staff, security was also a big problem. The cost of security was also quite high. Even if you spent a lot of money to build an extremely secure secret room, you would definitely not be safe without the protection of a peerless expert. If the treasure was kept in the secret room, it might be safer. However, there would be a time when you would take it out. The distance from the secret room to the auction house was not long, but without the protection of a peerless expert, it would definitely not be safe. In addition, the items you put up for auction were bought by customers at a high price. Although the treasure no longer belongs to you, you have to ensure the safety of the treasure in your territory. Even if the treasure is in the hands of a customer, as long as it is lost in your territory, you will be responsible. Although you won't pay the full price, if the treasure that the customer bought from you is lost in your territory, you will be responsible. Chapter 2:12. If the treasures that the customers bought from the auction house were lost in the auction house, even if the customers did not ask for compensation, the auction house's reputation would be ruined. Who would buy from an auction house that had no reputation? No matter how good the item was, if it was snatched away by someone else, who would dare to buy from such a place? Therefore, the cost in terms of security was also quite high. Hiring an ordinary expert might not cost much, but hiring a top-notch expert was not just a matter of money. It was also a matter of whether the other party would be willing to come to the auction house. As a top-notch expert, he also cared about his reputation. If the auction house was an unknown small auction house, then no matter how much money you offered, as a top-notch expert with dignity, he would not work for a small auction house. Therefore, it was not that easy to run an auction house. Most people who wanted to run an auction house were supported by the strength of their family or the strength of their sect. If it was an ordinary person, no matter how rich they would not be able to support the security of an auction house. Even if you had the protection of a top-notch expert and your security was absolutely reliable, where would you get the items to be auctioned? It was absolutely wishful thinking to rely on the auction house to get the good items themselves. Sun Xinjing knew that in an auction house, there were not many items that really belonged to the auction house. Most of the items were sent by some old customers. The items sent by these old customers were the real items that the auction house would auction. Sun Xinjing naturally understood these principles. He raised his head and looked around. Seeing that the disciples who went to search were not doing anything, he turned to look at Zhang Meng and asked with a smile, "Prince Zhang, if you want to run an auction house, do you know what the requirements are?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng hurriedly shook his head. "I don't know. Please enlighten me." Shipmaster Sunday, looking at Zhang Meng's blank expression, Sun Xinjing already understood. This kid doesn't know anything. I don't know how he thought about the auction house. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing picked up the teacup on the table and gestured to Zhang Meng. "Please have some tea." Sun Xinjing took a sip of tea and said slowly, "To run an auction house, the first thing you need is capital. That's because there are too many things that you need to spend money on. Building an auction house will cost a lot of money, and I won't say much about that. In addition, the treasures to be auctioned also need to have a supply channel. Otherwise, no matter how big or small an auction house is, if there are no good items to be auctioned, naturally no one will go there to buy things." Upon hearing this, Zhang Meng's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly clapped his hands and interrupted Sun Xinjing's words. "Branch leader Sun, does this mean that even if the auction house is not big enough, as long as the treasures are good enough, there will still be a lot of people coming?" After hearing Zhang Meng's question, Sun Xinjing smiled and nodded. "That's natural. For an auction house, no matter how big or small it is, as long as the items to be auctioned are good enough, that's enough." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng was overjoyed. At the same time, he was relieved. Just now, Sun Xinjing had said that to build a large auction house, the cost would be quite huge. This was not difficult for Zhang Meng. However, it would still take a lot of time to raise the gold coins. If he followed Sun Xinjing's words and built a small auction house first, then got some good treasures to be auctioned there, with Zhang Meng's strength, it would not be difficult for him to get some good treasures. This way, his reputation would slowly spread. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng cupped his fists and said to Sun Xinjing, "Thank you for your reminder, branch leader Sunday. Then I will build a small auction house first. After my reputation has spread, I will transform it into a large auction house." Seeing Zhang Meng's confident look, Sun Xinjing smiled bitterly and shook his head. This young man really thought of things too simply. Although the size of the auction house did not matter, as long as the treasures auctioned were good, it was fine. However, were good treasures so easy to get? Sun Xinjing knew that there were many auction houses that would do anything to obtain a good treasure. The amount of money spent and the means of competition were not something that ordinary people could obtain. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Meng and continued. Although the size of the auction house is not the most important, as long as the items auctioned are good enough, these can be made up for. However, a good auction item is very difficult to get. It is not as simple as you think. This is because all auction houses know that a good auction item will bring great fame to the auction house. For fame and profit, these auction houses will use all kinds of methods to get a good auction item. Hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Qiuming also said, "That is indeed the case. Branch Master Sun is right. Those auction houses are simply unscrupulous in order to obtain a good auction item." At this point, Zhang Qiuming paused for a moment. He thought for a moment before continuing. "I once heard someone mention something, but I don't know if it is true or not. I won't say who it was, but I will say that someone had a treasure in his hands. A certain auction house had sent someone to accept this auction item, but he was rejected by this person. This treasure was indeed good, and could bring great fame to the auction house. This auction house promised this person a huge profit. In fact, in order to increase their fame, they wanted to get it even if they had to pay a loss. However, this person still refused. In the end, this treasure was actually stolen by someone. This is not the main point. The main point is that this treasure will be auctioned in this auction house in half a month." Speaking up to this point, Zhang Qiuming looked at Zhang Meng and sighed. Then, he continued, "As for the owner of this treasure, when the treasure was stolen, he was harmed by the person who stole it." After hearing Zhang Qiuming's words, Zhang Meng only smiled faintly. He naturally understood the meaning of Zhang Qiuming's words and what he wanted to say. However, was Chief Zhang afraid of this? It was not that Zhang Meng was arrogant and conceited, but he had the ability to be arrogant and conceited. Zhang Meng did not believe that there was anyone in this world who could be his opponent. As long as the treasure was in his hands, he wanted to see who would dare to steal it. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng patted Zhang Qiuming's shoulder and said with a smile, "Prince Zhang, I understand what you mean. However, do you think that I would be afraid of someone stealing my things?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Zhang Qiuming was stunned. Then, he came to his senses and remembered Zhang Meng's true strength. Chapter 213. After hearing Zhang Qiuming's explanation, Sun Xinjing turned around and saw Zhang Meng's disapproving expression. He could only sigh in his heart. Young people are immature and don't know the risks involved. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing continued, "If you want to open an auction house, the channel for the treasures will be a problem. Also, after the treasures are retrieved, the security of the auction house will be a problem." At this point, Sun Xinjing paused for a moment before continuing. "If the treasures are directly placed in the secret room and not taken out, then it will be relatively safer. However, any treasures in the auction house are for auction and cannot be stored in the secret room for a long period of time. Therefore, after the treasures are taken out, the Tianji sect will not be able to do anything about security during this period of time. When the time comes, we can only hire a large number of experts to protect the security of the place. For example, the security of the auction venue, the security of the period when the treasures are taken out from the warehouse, the security of the period when the customers leave the auction house after they have obtained the treasures from the auction house, and so on and so forth. We will need a large number of experts to ensure that nothing goes wrong. At this point, Sun Xinjing paused for a moment. He turned to look at Zhang Meng and asked with a smile, "Prince Zhang, which one of these problems can you solve?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng thought carefully before replying, "There shouldn't be any problems." After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing's hand trembled, and he almost threw the teacup in his hand to the ground. After he had said those words, he had thought that Zhang Zian would give up on the idea of building an auction house. However, he had not expected Zhang Meng to actually say that there was no problem. After a while, Sun Xinjing asked tentatively, "Prince Zhang, where are you from?" Zhang Meng immediately replied, "I'm from the Twin Bull Village under the jurisdiction of Greenwood City." After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing was even more confused. Azure Wood City, Twin Bulls Village. Sun Xinjing knew of Azure Wood City, but he had never heard of the Twin Bull stronghold. Could it be that the Twin Bull Village was some sort of hidden sect? Or could it be that it was a place where powerful cultivators lived in seclusion? After thinking for a while, Sun Xinjing asked again, "Prince Zhang, which sect do you belong to?" Zhang Meng replied, "It's passed down in my family. My martial arts were all taught by my father." After listening to Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Qiuming only thought for a moment before he understood what Sun Xinjing meant. "Branch leader Sun, the fierce brothers' martial arts are quite powerful." After hearing Zhang Qiuming's words, Sun Xinjing nodded his head. He felt that his guess was right. The Twin Bull Village should be a place where powerful cultivators lived in seclusion, and this Prince Zhang was the son of a powerful cultivator. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing did not continue asking. This was because he knew that if he continued to ask, it would involve personal secrets. Since it was a secret, he naturally could not tell others. Since the other party had a powerful background, he did not try to persuade Zhang Meng any further and directly said, "Prince Zhang, since you have absolute confidence, then fine. After we've settled our matters here, I'll send people to your place to build an auction house. What do you think?" After hearing this, Zhang Meng hurriedly cupped his fists in thanks. Then, he spoke again. "Regarding the auction house, I'm not very clear about it. I only have a rough idea. So, could I ask Branch Leader Sun to explain it to me?" After hearing this, Sun Xinjing nodded his head and smiled. "As long as Prince Zhang wants to hear, I'll explain it to you." After hearing Sun Xinjing's answer, Zhang Meng hurriedly cupped his fists in thanks again. Only then did Sun Xinjing slowly open his mouth. "In my opinion, the most important thing for an auction house is not the quality of the treasures, but the safety of the treasures. Think about it. Even if you have a good treasure, if you don't have enough power to protect it, then not only will the treasure not benefit you, but it will also harm you. If someone has an extremely precious treasure and wants your auction house to auction it off, then, of course, you also know that the treasure must be placed in the auction house a few days before the auction. And this period of time is an extremely crucial period. If the treasure is lost during this period of time, it will cause irreparable damage to the reputation of the auction house. If too many treasures are lost, the auction house will naturally lose all credibility. By then, who would dare to auction their treasures here? In the long run, no matter how much money you have, I'm afraid the auction house will only end up going bankrupt." After saying this, Sun Xinjing looked up at Zhang Meng and asked with a smile, "Prince Zhang, do you agree with this point of mine?" After hearing Zhang Meng's question, he hurriedly nodded his head. "Branch Leader Sun is right. I completely agree. If an auction house can't even solve the problem of the safety of the treasures, then it will definitely fail in the long run." When Sun Xinjing heard this, he was extremely happy that Zhang Meng agreed with his point of view. He thought about this problem differently from others. Most people thought that the most important thing for an auction house was the quality of the treasures auctioned. However, Sun Xinjing's view was different. He always thought that the most important thing for an auction house to continue operating was safety. If there were two auction houses competing, even if there were the same treasures auctioned, the safety of the two auction houses would be different. One auction house spent a lot of money to build a secret room and hired top experts to protect it. Although the other auction house also took safety measures, the investment was much less. From the perspective of these two auction houses, Sun Xinjing was sure that in the long run, if they were willing to spend a lot of money to build a secret room and hire top experts to protect their treasures, this auction house would definitely be able to last until the end. Even if the treasures auctioned by this auction house were not as good as those auctioned by the other auction house, in terms of overall competitiveness, they would definitely be much stronger than the other auction house. Therefore, Sun Xinjing always thought that the most important thing for an auction house was safety. Seeing that Zhang Meng agreed with his point of view, Sun Xinjing was very happy. This was because many people did not agree with his point of view. They thought that the most important thing for an auction house was the treasures auctioned, not the safety of the auction house. Therefore, many auction houses would spend a lot of money to search for treasures instead of building a safety system. Sun Xinjing's point of view was not because he was a member of the Tianji sect and wanted to promote his sect, but because he really thought so. Seeing that Sun Xinjing was satisfied, Zhang Meng also spoke. Branch leader Sun and I have the same opinion. If an auction house can't even solve the safety problem of the treasures, then I think that this auction house is not qualified to be an auction house. Therefore, such an auction house will definitely not last long before it closes down. Chapter 214. Zhang Meng paused for a moment before he cupped his fists at Sun Xinjing and continued. My family believes that the security of the auction house is the most important. That's why I came here. This is also the reason why I came to the Tianji sect. Sun Xinjing nodded after hearing Zhang Meng's words. Then, he said, the security of the auction house involves many aspects. The only thing that the Tianji sect can help you with is the location where the treasures are stored, which is the secret room where the treasures are stored. I think that the secret room built by the Tianji sect to store the treasures should be sufficient in terms of security. However, other than the location where the treasures are stored, we can't do anything about the other places. For example, when it comes to inspecting the goods, or when it comes to transporting the goods, or when it comes to protecting the safety of the customers, the Tianji sect can't do anything about these. Zhang Meng nodded after hearing Sun Xinjing's words. That's enough. At this point, Zhang Meng suddenly thought of something and continued. If we connect the entire auction house and design it into a large-scale secret room, I think that there shouldn't be any problems in terms of security. Sun Xinjing was stunned after hearing Zhang Meng's words. Then, he narrowed his eyes and began to ponder over Zhang Meng's words. In the past, when the auction house was built, it was mainly a secret room, which was also the so-called warehouse. The main job of the Tianji sect was to build the secret room into an impenetrable fortress that was heavily guarded. The warehouse of the auction house was filled with all kinds of mechanisms to protect the treasures. Therefore, there were loopholes in this. Those who might spend a lot of money would invest to build a super-secret room. If they had more money, they would build the auction house into a super-secret room as well. However, Sun Xinjing had never built a super-secret room for the entire auction house. Although Sun Xinjing had thought of this problem before, it was only in his imagination. If the auction house was really built like this, the amount of money spent would be unimaginable. That was because it would cost a lot to set up a secret passage in a large warehouse, and a warehouse didn't take up much space in the entire auction house. If the entire auction house was turned into a super large secret room, the cost would be unimaginable. It was precisely because of this reason that although Sun Xinjing had thought about this problem, he had never done it because it would cost too much money. No one would agree to it, so he didn't have the chance to do it. Sun Xinjing had never done this before, but it didn't mean that he didn't want to do it. It was because the client didn't agree to it. Many people would not agree to spend so much money to build a large secret room in the auction house. They would think that it was a waste or an unnecessary expense. Those who could open an auction house naturally had a certain background. It was also because they had many experts protecting their territory outside of the secret room. Therefore, everyone generally believed that there was no need to build a secret room outside of the secret room. After listening to Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing fell into deep thought. He wasn't thinking about the difficulty of this matter, but the cost. If the entire auction house was turned into a large secret room, how many gold coins would it cost? In other words, it would cost more than building a warehouse. Zhang Meng saw that Sun Xinjing didn't answer his question, so he asked doubtfully, "Branch leader Sun, is there something wrong with what I said?" Zhang Meng's words suddenly woke up Sun Xinjing, who was in deep thought. He thought about it again, then looked up at Zhang Meng and said slowly, "I have thought about the method that Prince Zhang mentioned before, but the cost is too high. No one is willing to bear this expense, so no one has done it." After listening to Sun Xinjing's answer, Zhang Meng quickly asked, "Branch leader Sun, if the entire auction house is turned into a super secret room, how much more gold coins would it cost?" Sun Xinjing heard this, sighed, and then answered, "I've also thought about it just now. If the entire auction house is built into a warehouse, it would cost much more than building a warehouse alone." Zhang Meng asked, "Then how much more will it cost?" Sun Xinjing answered, "We can calculate it this way. If the entire auction house is turned into a mechanism, then the cost will naturally be many times more than building a warehouse." Speaking up to here, Sun Xinjing paused for a moment. He thought for a moment before continuing. For example, if it costs 100,000 gold coins to build a warehouse, then if the entire auction house is turned into a mechanism, then the cost will probably be a few million gold coins. Zhang Meng heard this and nodded. Sun Xinjing's answer wasn't out of his expectations. To build something like this, it naturally had to be calculated by area. A single warehouse didn't take up a large portion of the entire auction house. Therefore, if one wanted to turn the entire auction house into a super secret room, one only had to subtract the area of the entire auction house from the area of one warehouse. Naturally, one could calculate how much more gold coins one would need to spend. After understanding this, Zhang Meng was now considering whether or not he should build such an auction house. Now, Zhang Meng only had a few gold coins. It was too little, and the cost of building an auction house was too great. With the little gold coins Zhang Meng had, it would be difficult to build a warehouse. In other words, the difference between the gold coins he had and the gold coins he needed to build an auction house was too great. Zhang Meng was having a headache over this problem. He wanted to finish building the auction house as soon as possible so that he could quickly earn profits and change the situation in Twin Bull Mountain. He didn't know how to do anything else. Although he was invincible, no matter how powerful he was, he didn't know what he could do in this world that could make him earn money quickly. The key point was that the people of Twin Bull Mountain weren't good at business. If they did something else, it wouldn't last long. Therefore, Zhang Meng wanted to do something that could last forever. The auction house industry was naturally very good. During the period when the auction house started, he would be able to take care of all the problems. For example, the problem of the treasures needed for the auction house and the security of the auction house could be solved by Zhang Meng. In the future, when the auction house became famous, Zhang Meng believed that he wouldn't need to do anything regarding the treasures. Someone would naturally come to his door. At that time, the auction house would be able to operate normally. Even if he left, the people of Twin Bull Mountain would be able to run it. Another reason why Zhang Meng wanted to open an auction house was because there was relatively less competition in the auction house industry. Chapter 2:15. If it were any other business, even with Zhang Meng in charge, there was no guarantee that they would make money if they relied on normal operations. What's more, Zhang Meng wouldn't stay here for the rest of his life. Even if he saved some money, in the business industry, if his luck wasn't good and his foresight wasn't good, it would be easy for him to lose his capital. This was the problem that Zhang Meng was worried about. If he stayed in Twin Bull Mountain, all these problems would not be a problem. However, if he left and the business was still running well, after he left, the people in Twin Bull Mountain would lose all his capital. When that happened, Twin Bull Mountain would return to its former state. Zhang Meng had thought about it in detail. No matter what business they wanted to run, there would be a lot of competition. Only in the auction house industry, the competition was much smaller. To build a large auction house would require countless gold coins. Moreover, if Zhang Meng wanted to build a large auction house full of secret mechanisms, the amount of money he would need to spend would be astronomical. The key was that Zhang Meng did not have that many gold coins at the moment, and he did not want to engage in crooked activities. Therefore, this was the biggest problem. Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Meng's hesitation and said with a smile, "Actually, we don't need to build a large auction house like you said. We only need to build a tight secret room to ensure the safety of the treasures when they are stored. As for when the treasures are taken out, I think..." At this point, Sun Xinjing paused and looked at Zhang Meng before continuing, "I think your family should be able to send some experts. As long as you have these experts, you should be able to ensure the safety of the treasures. By doing this, you can save a lot of money. When you have the money in the future, it won't be too late to build it slowly." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng was stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly and shook his head. He knew that Sun Xinjing must have misunderstood and thought that he was a disciple of some big family. He might even think that his family was filled with experts and could casually send out a few experts to protect the safety of those treasures. If that were true, then it would be fine. Unfortunately, it was all just his imagination. However, Sun Xinjing's words made Zhang Meng's heart skip a beat. It suddenly occurred to him that he could solve all of these problems. With him overseeing Twin Bull Mountain, even if there were no mechanisms or secret passages, no one would be able to steal the treasures from under his nose. At this thought, Zhang Meng suddenly had an idea. If it was as Sun Xinjing had said, it would definitely be a good idea. First, he would build a simple auction hall. He would not build any other buildings. As long as there was a place to auction the treasures, everything would be solved. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng was instantly overjoyed. He said, "Branch leader's son, I won't hide it from you. I really don't have that many gold coins right now. How about this? Let's build the auction hall first and the other buildings. After we earn some money, we can slowly build them. What do you think?" After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing almost jumped out of his chair. Zhang Meng's words were too shocking. In the beginning, he said that he would build the world's largest auction hall. But in the blink of an eye, it became like this. Only build one auction hall? That was a little too ridiculous. Sun Xinjing took a deep breath and calmed his chaotic emotions. He slowly asked, "Prince Zhang, are we only going to build one auction hall?" Zhang Meng nodded. "Only one auction hall. As for the other places, we'll talk about them in the future." After Sun Xinjing heard the affirmative answer, he was stunned again. He couldn't believe his ears. He had already said that the most important thing about the auction hall was its safety. And the most important place was the auction hall's warehouse, which was where the treasures were stored. Could it be that they were only going to build one auction hall, and not even a warehouse? Then, where would the treasures be stored? Would they just be displayed on the streets? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing tried to remind him. Prince Zhang, are you really only going to build one auction hall and not even a warehouse? After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng nodded and replied embarrassedly, Branch leader son, I won't hide it from you. I only have 10,000 gold coins. If I use it sparingly, I think building an auction hall shouldn't be a problem. This time, Sun Xinjing couldn't sit still anymore. He stood up abruptly and stared at Zhang Meng. After a while, he realized that he had lost his composure and sat back down. Although he had returned to his seat, Sun Xinjing's heart couldn't calm down. At the beginning, he had said it in an imposing manner, as if he had countless gold coins. But in the end, he only had 10,000 gold coins. This young man actually wanted to use 10,000 gold coins to open an auction hall. No matter how Sun Xinjing thought about it, he couldn't think of a way to use 10,000 gold coins to open an auction hall. To put it bluntly, these 10,000 gold coins weren't even enough to hire people from the Tianji sect. Needless to say, even if Zhang Meng used 10,000 gold coins to build an auction hall, this was still using it sparingly. It was a very small auction hall without any decorations. It was just a big room. However, if you spent all these 10,000 gold coins, wouldn't you stock up on goods? Or rather, if you didn't have a warehouse to begin with, wouldn't you hire experts? If you wanted to stock up on goods, even if you knew that this treasure would bring in a lot of profit, if you didn't have the money to stock up on goods, everything would be in vain. Even if you had a treasure, you didn't even have a well-guarded warehouse. Where would you put the treasure and how would you ensure its safety? Wouldn't that mean that even if you had a treasure, you couldn't guarantee its safety? Thinking of this, a beautiful scene suddenly appeared in Sun Xinjing's mind. In an ordinary big room, the floor was filled with treasures. The auction guests were all sitting on small stools, waiting for the treasures to be auctioned off. The table used by the auctioneer was the usual dining table at home. The auctioneer was just an ordinary person. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing couldn't help but shiver. Could this also be called an auction hall? Sun Xinjing raised his head and looked at Zhang Meng, who was not far away, and asked again. Prince Zhang, these 10,000 gold coins are your pocket money for this month. If you don't have enough gold coins, I think it's better for you to tell your family. Otherwise, these 10,000 gold coins can't be used for anything, not to mention building an auction hall. After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng shook his head and smiled apologetically. This is all I have. Chapter 216. After Sun Xinjing heard Zhang Meng's words, he was stunned at first. Then he smiled and said, Prince Zhang, I know you want to rely on your own strength to complete your business, but you have to know that sometimes it's not a bad choice to ask for help from your family. After Zhang Meng heard Sun Xinjing's words, he was also stunned, but he quickly understood. Sun Xinjing thought that he was from a large family, and at this critical moment, asking for help from his family should be the best choice. However, the large family that Sun Xinjing mentioned did not exist. If there was such a large family, why would Zhang Meng bother to build an auction house here? He would have gone to God knows where long ago. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng hurriedly waved his hand. Branch leader's son, you've misunderstood. I'm not from a large family. If I want to build this auction house, no one can help me. After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing was stunned. After a while, he asked tentatively, Prince Zhang, you can't be thinking of building an auction house with these 10,000 gold coins, right? Zhang Meng nodded, that's true. I only have 10,000 gold coins now. After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing's gaze froze. He carefully looked at Zhang Meng again, and felt that there was nothing special about this person in front of him. Why would he have such an idea? Seeing that Sun Xinjing was only looking at him without saying anything, Zhang Meng smiled. Branch leader son, although I don't have much money now, believe me, I will have more money very soon. After saying this, Zhang Meng paused for a while, then said apologetically, I know that it will cost a lot of gold coins to hire your people to build an auction house for me. Can we discuss this? I'll owe you first, and when I have the money, I'll pay you double. Hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing was truly shocked. In the beginning, he spoke so arrogantly, but in the end, he actually wanted to buy on credit. By now, Sun Xinjing had somewhat understood that this person was clearly mentally unstable. If they listened to him, who knew what kind of trouble they would cause? No matter how knowledgeable Sun Xinjing was, he had never seen someone who wanted to build the world's largest auction house with only 10,000 gold coins. Most importantly, this person didn't even have the money to hire someone to help him see the auction house. Even if Sun Xinjing was indifferent to fame and fortune, if he didn't even want to pay, how could he build an auction house for him? Don't the people of the Tianji sect need to eat? Don't they need to buy clothes? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing decided to pour cold water on Zhang Meng, so that this abnormal fellow would wake up and quickly go home. Sun Xinjing looked at Zhang Meng again and said with a smile, Prince Zhang, I know how you feel, and I know that you want to make a name for yourself. But sometimes you have to face reality. To put it bluntly, your 10,000 gold coins aren't even enough to build a slightly better house, not to mention an auction house. At this point, Sun Xinjing paused for a while, and then said seriously, Prince Zhang, do you understand what I mean? Zhang Meng heard this and hurriedly nodded. I understand branch leader Sun's good intentions, but I have confidence that I can do this well. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing was stunned, and looked at Zhang Meng doubtfully. He didn't understand if Zhang Meng understood what he said just now. However, how could Zhang Meng not understand the meaning behind Sun Xinjing's words? He wanted to say that since you don't have money, you should stop for a while. However, Zhang Meng wasn't someone who would give up easily. Moreover, although Zhang Meng didn't have money now, was he someone who lacked money? To put it bluntly, if Zhang Meng wanted money, he could get it with a wave of his hand. However, that was meaningless. Since he had such high skills, if he still did that kind of thing, he would be letting himself down as a transmigrator. Zhang Meng had read a lot of novels, but he had never seen a main character who earned a lot of money by stealing and robbing. Everyone relied on their abilities to make a living. If they did that kind of thing, wouldn't it prove that they didn't have the ability? Therefore, the proper industry was Zhang Meng's choice. Seeing that Sun Xinjing didn't believe him, Zhang Meng wasn't unhappy. After all, Sun Xinjing was already a good person. If he were someone who prioritized benefits, after listening to his words, he would have probably chased him out of the South County branch long ago. Why would he be here to patiently explain and tell him about the difficulties of this school? Seeing that Zhang Meng didn't give up on this idea, Sun Xinjing wanted to ignore this matter. However, when he looked at Zhang Meng's young face, he sighed and said, Prince Zhang, if you use these 10,000 gold coins to build the auction hall, then what will happen to your supply? Don't forget, the supply is where you spend a lot of money. Even if your auction hall is built, if you don't have the supply, what can you sell? Since there's nothing to auction, what's the point of this auction hall? After Zhang Meng heard Sun Xinjing's question, he quickly waved his hand. Division Leader Sun, the matter of the supply is a small matter to me. I don't need to spend money. Sun Xinjing was stunned again when he heard Zhang Meng's words. He asked curiously, Prince Zhang, why don't you need to spend money? Could it be that someone provides you with the supply for free? After Zhang Meng heard Sun Xinjing's words, he was about to deny it, but then he nodded. Yes, someone does provide me with the supply for free. Sun Xinjing smiled when he heard this. Prince Zhang, it seems that you still don't understand these things. If it's a free supply, it definitely won't be anything good. At this point, Sun Xinjing's tone was right. He thought about what to say next, organized his thoughts, and continued. I've said it just now. The most important issue for an auction house is safety. Another important issue is the supply. If your auction house only auctions some ordinary goods, then think about it. Who will buy from your auction house? Although you don't need to spend much money, in the long run, your auction house won't last long. No one will go there. It's also because of this reason that all the auction houses are willing to spend a lot of money, or even lose money, just to get in touch with some real treasures to increase their auction house's reputation and attract more people to come here to buy things. Therefore, if you want to save money on the supply, it's absolutely impossible. Doing so will only cause your auction house's reputation to decrease until it can't continue operating. After listening to Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng deeply agreed. The most important thing for an auction house was, of course, the auction items. The auction items directly affected the future development of the auction house. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that. Chapter 217. Sun Xinjing's opinion was absolutely reasonable. However, would these problems pose a problem for Zhang Meng? Impossible. The reason why Zhang Meng wanted to open an auction house was because he had the confidence in this aspect. Good things naturally wouldn't trouble Zhang Meng. As long as he wanted it, he could get any good thing in this world. However, Sun Xinjing kindly reminded him, so Zhang Meng definitely wouldn't rashly contradict him. Zhang Meng thought about it and said seriously, Branch Leader Sun, thank you for your kindness. I can guarantee that the things auctioned in my auction house are definitely the best things. Speaking of this, Zhang Meng's eyes showed a strong sense of confidence. I think that the supply of goods is definitely not a problem for me. Branch Leader Sun can rest assured on this point. The confidence in Zhang Meng's eyes made Sun Xinjing even more suspicious. Was this person's mental state normal? Sun Xinjing had seen many strong people, but no one dared to say such big words. However, Sun Xinjing wasn't someone who liked to argue with others. Since Zhang Meng said that he had good things to auction, then he would take it that he had good things to auction. On this issue, there was nothing much to say. Sun Xinjing thought about it and continued, since Prince Zhang is confident about the supply of goods, then what about the safety issue? As I said just now, the safety issue of an auction house is also quite important. If there is no safety guarantee, no matter how many treasures you have, it will be useless. They will all be snatched away. After listening to Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng didn't even hesitate and said with a smile, Branch Leader Sun, this is even more of a problem. I can guarantee that nothing will be lost in my auction house. Seeing that Zhang Meng was so confident about the safety issue, Sun Xinjing was really surprised. Safety was always the biggest problem for an auction house. Many large auction houses, in order to ensure the safety of their auction houses, spent a large amount of money to hire people from the Heaven Secrets sect to build secret rooms for them to ensure the safety of their treasures. Even so, there were still some treasures that could cause accident. However, the young man in front of him actually spoke with such confidence. This was really strange. Don't forget, this person had just said that his funds were only enough to build an auction hall. This meant that his auction house didn't have a warehouse, which was the kind of tightly guarded secret room. Without a secret room to protect the treasure, where did this person get the confidence to guarantee the safety of the treasure? A big family. This thought popped up in Sun Xinjing's mind again. Could it be that this person didn't tell him the truth just now? Was he actually someone from a big family? Only this could explain why he was so confident. Even the mild-tempered Sun Xinjing was a little angry when he recalled how Zhang Meng had said that he wasn't from a big family. He had kindly explained it to him, but he actually dared to lie to him. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing asked somewhat unhappily, Prince Zhang, since you've already thought of it, I have nothing more to say. When Zhang Meng heard this, He hurriedly cupped his fists towards Sun Xinjing. In that case, can branch leader Sun send Yixian to supervise the construction of the auction house for me? Yixian? Hearing this name, Sun Xinjing's mood became even worse. The matter of losing the blueprint had already left him in a terrible fix. Until now, there was still no trace of it. Most importantly, this blueprint was too precious. It could be said that nothing could compare to the value of this blueprint. Hearing Zhang Meng's question, Sun Xinjing couldn't help but sigh. Then, he slowly said, Prince Zhang, I'm afraid that won't do. Yi Xian has something to do, so I'm afraid he won't be able to build the auction house for you. Why don't we send someone else? What do you think? When Zhang Meng heard Sun Xinjing's words, he shook his head indifferently. Branch leader Sun, anyone can do it, but there's only one condition. I want the person with the highest skills in the South County branch to go. Speaking up to this point, Zhang Meng's tone paused for a moment before he sternly said, Branch leader Sun, I've already said that although I've only built an auction hall, I can guarantee that I'll be building more buildings very soon. Therefore, I need someone who can coordinate the overall situation and build a huge secret room for the entire auction house. I'm sure Division Leader Sun understands the difficulty of this. If someone who isn't skilled enough is unable to connect the entire auction house together, then it would lose its meaning. Therefore, no matter who builds the auction house for me, I won't object. However, Branch Leader Sun must think carefully about who is the most suitable candidate. Otherwise, after building the auction hall, if you build other things, they won't be connected. Then, you'll have to tear them down and rebuild them. This is too troublesome. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing hesitated. Although he didn't believe Zhang Meng's words, what if Zhang Meng was lucky and he really opened the auction house? If the person he sent first didn't have good skills and built the auction hall first, then when Zhang Meng wanted to build other buildings in the future, he wouldn't be able to connect them. Although Zhang Meng's chances of success were very small, it would be terrible if that happened. At that time, if this person's auction hall really needed to be torn down and rebuilt to connect all the buildings, then the Tianji sect would lose a lot of face. Although the chances of this happening were very small, Sun Xinjing didn't want it to happen. If it was in the past, Sun Xinjing wouldn't even hesitate to send Yi Xian to build the auction house for this person. However, now that such a big problem had happened, he couldn't send Yi Xian. But who should he send? LV Wenkong couldn't go. Even if Tang Jianan wanted to go, Sun Xinjing couldn't let him go. Zhang Leji was still suspicious, so he naturally couldn't let him leave the South County branch. What if the blueprint was in his hands and he took the opportunity to take it out? What should he do then? Bai Jianmu was also Sun Xinjing's suspect. Although he didn't say it out loud, Bai Jianmu was very likely the person who stole the blueprint. Sun Xinjing naturally couldn't send such a person. Who else was next? Lu Huarong, Mei Guangji, and Li Shuyan. These three couldn't do it. They didn't have enough experience and weren't skilled enough. Even if they went, they probably wouldn't be able to complete the mission. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt a little sad. He had 8 disciples, but up until now, he couldn't even send one of them. Seeing Sun Xinjing hesitate, Zhang Qiuming, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Division Leader Sun, if we want to wait for Yi Xian to build the auction house for us, how long will we have to wait? Sun Xinjing shook his head after hearing Zhang Qiuming's question. Then, he turned to look at Zhang Qiuming and slowly spoke. To be honest, our sect has lost an item, and Yi Xian is related to this lost item. Chapter 218. In fact, Zhang Meng and Zhang Qiuming had already heard about what Sun Xinjing said from the disciples at the entrance of the South County branch. However, since Sun Xinjing didn't mention it, the two of them naturally couldn't say anything. At this moment, since Sun Xinjing had already mentioned it, Zhang Qiuming quickly asked. Division Leader Sun, have you found the lost item? Sun Xinjing shook his head when he heard this. I haven't found it. As soon as Sun Xinjing said this, there was a series of footsteps around them. Then, a series of discussions could be heard. When the three of them heard this, they quickly turned their heads and saw LV Wenkong and Tang Jianan walking over. After LV Wenkong and Tang Jianan arrived in front of Sun Xinjing, they first cupped their fists and bowed. LV Wenkong said, Master, we didn't find anything. After Sun Xinjing heard their words, he first nodded and then waved his hand at the two of them. You guys sit down and rest first. Let's see how the rest of the investigation is going. Just as LV Wenkong and Tang Jianan were about to find a seat to sit down, they heard a series of chaotic footsteps and a cry of surprise coming from upstairs. Master, I found it! When Sun Xinjing heard this shout, he was immediately overjoyed. He suddenly stood up and looked at the second floor. The person who shouted on the second floor was Bai Jianmu. At this moment, Bai Jianmu was holding a box and quickly walking down the stairs. When he came close, Bai Jianmu didn't care about bowing. He first handed the box in his hand to Sun Xinjing with both hands. Seeing this box, Sun Xinjing's eyes suddenly widened. He quickly took the box from Bai Jianmu and asked, Where did you find it? After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Bai Jianmu cupped his hands and replied, Master, I found it in third senior brother's bedroom. Sun Xinjing's eyes narrowed and his face turned ashen. He looked around and didn't see Zhang Leji, so he asked, Where's Zhang Leji? Bai Jianmu hurriedly replied, Master, third senior brother is still searching up there. After hearing Bai Jianmu's answer, Sun Xinjing snorted coldly. What are you still investigating? Hurry up and tell him to come down and see me. Bai Jianmu hurriedly responded and led Lu Huarong to the second floor. At the same time, he shouted loudly. Third senior brother, Master is looking for you. Come down quickly. After Bai Jianmu left, Sun Xinjing sat back down on the chair and checked the box in his hand. When he saw the box clearly, Sun Xinjing's face changed again. This box was made by Sun Xinjing himself. The entire box was made of bronze. There was no open lock on the outside, only a secret lock on the lid. As for the method to open the lid, only Sun Xinjing knew. Sun Xinjing was a trap master. He was sure that no one could open this bronze box that he made. It was true that no one could open it using normal methods. However, there were signs that someone had forcefully pried open the lid of the bronze box. It was indeed so. Sun Xinjing only took the lid of the box and gently lifted it, and the lid was opened. The tightly designed secret lock had long been broken by someone. After Sun Xinjing opened the bronze box and saw the situation inside, his face turned pale and his hands trembled uncontrollably. There was nothing in the bronze box. Sun Xinjing remembered very clearly that the blueprint was hidden in this box. This proved that the blueprint had been taken away by someone. Who was the person who took the blueprint? There was no need to guess. Zhang Leji. The box was found in Zhang Leji's room. Sun Xinjing couldn't think of anyone else who could take the blueprint other than Zhang Leji. Zhang Meng didn't know what happened. He only heard that some precious blueprint was lost. Now, looking at Sun Xinjing's expression, Zhang Meng understood. It must be something that he hid in the box that was stolen. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng's heart suddenly moved. He remembered what the person said just now. The box was found in Zhang Leji's bedroom. This meant that Zhang Leji was the one who stole the blueprint. However, Zhang Meng felt that something was wrong. When he first came, he didn't think that Zhang Leji would steal the blueprint. Not only that, after Zhang Leji heard what he said, he immediately looked for his master to investigate the matter. Would such a person steal the blueprint? Zhang Meng thought of this and couldn't help but reject this thought. If Zhang Leji really stole the blueprint, he should try his best not to mention it. Why would he get himself into trouble then? If he didn't care about this matter, they wouldn't be able to trace it back to him. Wouldn't that be safer? More importantly, Zhang Meng felt that Zhang Leji wasn't an idiot. At least, he wasn't an idiot who would hide the stolen item in such an obvious place. Under normal circumstances, as a machine engineer, Zhang Leji would definitely hide the item in the most secretive place. If a machine engineer's hidden item could be easily found by others, he wouldn't be considered a machine engineer. Even for a machine engineer, it wasn't an easy task to find another machine engineer's hidden item. How long did it take? Zhang Meng remembered clearly that the time taken by these people was too short. It didn't make sense for them to be able to find a machine engineer's hidden item in such a short period of time. Very quickly, footsteps were heard from the second floor again. Then, the four of them walked down the stairs together. Just as they reached the bottom of the stairs, Zhang Leji saw the bronze box in Sun Xinjing's hands. He was delighted at first, but then, his face turned pale. When everyone arrived, Zhang Leji remembered very clearly that his master didn't have this bronze box with him. However, his master had this box with him now. More importantly, everyone knew that this bronze box was the box that his master kept the blueprint in. It was a good thing that they found the bronze box. However, they found it in his own residence. Thinking of this, Zhang Leji slowed down his footsteps. He turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu and saw that Bai Jianmu was looking at him with a cold smile. "Third senior brother, hurry up and leave. Master is still waiting for you." After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Leji suddenly had an idea. However, he didn't say anything and walked towards his master again. Just as Zhang Leji walked in front of Sun Xinjing, he saw Sun Xinjing throw the bronze box in his hands in front of him. "Zhang Leji, take a look at what this is." The box in Sun Xinjing's hands fell to the ground and rolled a few times before stopping in front of Zhang Leji. Seeing his master's rage, Zhang Leji was shocked. He hurriedly bent down to pick up the box and respectfully presented it with both hands. "Master, why are you looking for me?" After Sun Xinjing heard Zhang Leji's words, he coldly snorted and pointed at the box in Zhang Leji's hand. "Zhang Leji, look at what you've done." Chapter 219. Hearing Sun Xinjing's angry rebuke, Zhang Leji was shocked and hurriedly asked, "Master, what the hell is going on?" Sun Xinjing slammed the table and said angrily, "Zhang Leji, how dare you ask me what's going on? Open the box and take a look." After hearing Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Leji couldn't care less. He hurriedly lifted the lid and looked inside the box. When he saw the situation inside the box, he couldn't help but exclaim, "Nothing." After the exclamation, Zhang Leji hurriedly looked up at Sun Xinjing and asked, "Master, where's the blueprint in the box?" This time, before Sun Xinjing could answer, Bai Jianmu said coldly, "Third senior brother, where's the blueprint? I think we should ask you." After Zhang Leji heard Bai Jianmu's words, he immediately flew into a rage. He suddenly turned around and pointed at Bai Jianmu, angrily saying, "Bai Jianmu, don't talk nonsense. How would I know where the blueprint in the box is?" After hearing Zhang Leji's answer, Sun Xinjing snorted coldly, "Zhang Leji, don't forget that this box was found in your bedroom. How could you ask someone else where the blueprint is?" Hearing this, Zhang Leji was shocked. He suddenly knelt on the ground and shouted, "Master, this has nothing to do with me. I didn't steal the blueprint." Before Zhang Leji could finish his explanation, he was interrupted by a somewhat impatient Sun Xinjing. Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jianmu and said, "Tell me how you found the box." Hearing this, Bai Jianmu hurriedly replied, "Master, I went to search third senior brother's bedroom with junior brother Lu. As a result, we found this bronze box under his bed." Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu paused for a moment before continuing, "Junior brother Lu can testify for me on this matter." After hearing Bai Jianmu's answer, Sun Xinjing slowly turned to Zhang Leji and asked coldly, "Zhang Leji, what else do you want to say?" When Zhang Liji heard the conversation between Bai Jianmu and Sun Xinjing, he was so scared that his face turned ashen. He cursed in his heart. Why was there a bronze box in his bedroom? Master, I definitely didn't steal the blueprints. You can only swear to the heavens that there must be a reason for this. Please investigate it. Hearing this, Sun Xinjing suddenly sighed and said slowly, Zhang Liji, I'll give you a chance now. If you hand over the blueprint now, I can let bygones be bygones and forgive you this time. Sun Xinjing knew that the most important thing now was not to punish anyone, but to find the blueprint. As long as he could find the blueprint, nothing else mattered. As long as Zhang Liji took out the blueprint now, Sun Xinjing would definitely not punish him severely. At most, he would really expel him from the sect. As soon as Sun Xinjing's voice fell, Bai Jianmu spoke first. Third senior apprentice brother, Master has already been extremely benevolent to you. Hurry up and take out the blueprints. Master will definitely not punish you severely. Hurry up and take them out, so that Master won't worry. After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Liji's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly pointed at Bai Jianmu and shouted, Master, it must be him. Bai Jianmu framed me. I didn't steal the blueprint. Bai Jianmu must have deliberately put the bronze box in my room when he went to search my room. Master, I would never do such a thing. After hearing Zhang Liji's explanation, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jianmu, but he didn't say anything. He just stared at Bai Jianmu. Seeing this, Bai Jianmu hurriedly cupped his fists and said, Master, when I searched the room, junior brother Lu was watching. If third senior brother insists that I framed him, I have nothing to say. I can only ask junior brother Lu to testify for me. As soon as Bai Jianmu finished speaking, Lu Huarong stepped forward and cupped his fist. Master, I can testify for senior brother Bai that this bronze box was indeed found under third senior brother's bed. Senior brother Bai definitely didn't frame third senior brother. Master, please investigate. Hearing Lu Huarong's words, Sun Xinjing nodded. He turned his eyes back to Zhang Liji and asked slowly, Zhang Liji, now that things have come to this, what else do you have to say? After hearing Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong's words, Zhang Liji already knew that things were not good. If it was only Bai Jianmu alone, it would be easy to deal with. But with Lu Huarong, it would be difficult to deal with this matter. Zhang Liji never expected that Bai Jianmu would want to search his room first. It turned out that he had this idea. However, even if he knew that Bai Jianmu had this idea, Zhang Liji still couldn't do anything. Thinking of the consequences of this matter, Zhang Liji's heart gradually sank, as if it had sunk into a 1,000-year-old ice cellar. Seeing that Zhang Liji didn't answer his question, Sun Xinjing said loudly, Zhang Liji, I'll give you one last chance. If you don't take out the blueprint, don't blame me for not respecting our relationship as master and disciple. Zhang Liji wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and said loudly, Master, if I was the one who stole the blueprint, why would I be so careless as to put the box in his room? Master, don't you think this is suspicious? When Sun Xinjing heard this, he was suddenly startled. A trace of doubt rose in his heart, and he gradually awoke from his rage. Zhang Liji was right. If Zhang Liji really stole the blueprint, why would he put the bronze box in his room? If it was for safety, he should have destroyed the bronze box long ago. As long as Zhang Liji destroyed the bronze box, Bai Jianmu naturally wouldn't be able to find this evidence today. Could it be? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jianmu, puzzled. Seeing Sun Xinjing looking at him, Bai Jianmu knew that his master was suspecting him, so he hurriedly said, Master, you're right. This bronze box was found in third senior brother's bedroom. This is absolutely true, and you can't deny it. As for why third senior brother didn't destroy the bronze box, but left it in his room, this is also very easy to explain. Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu turned to look at Zhang Liji and said with a cold smile, Third senior brother, You left this bronze box behind because you want to frame someone at a critical moment to achieve your goal, right? You found this bronze box today because you didn't expect that someone would come to search it today, so you were careless and let me catch you red-handed. Third senior brother, I'm right? After listening to Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Liji was so angry that he wanted to beat Bai Jianmu into a pulp to vent his anger. However, this was just his imagination. If he really did that, he was afraid that this matter would be settled. Sun Xinjing would then think that he had attacked Bai Jianmu out of anger and humiliation. Chapter 220. After Sun Xinjing heard Bai Jianmu's words, although he still had doubts in his heart, he had to admit that Bai Jianmu's words were very reasonable. This bronze box was really useful. Just like what Bai Jianmu had said, Zhang Liji could use this bronze box to frame others at a critical moment. That was why he kept it. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing's gaze turned cold again. He turned to look at Zhang Liji and shouted sternly, "Zhang Liji, are you really not going to take out the blueprint?" Hearing this, Zhang Liji hurriedly bowed to his master and said loudly, "Master, I really didn't take the blueprint. Someone must be framing me. That's right, it must be Bai Jianmu. He must have suggested searching everyone's rooms to frame me. Master, I'm innocent. I didn't steal the blueprint." Seeing that Zhang Liji was unwilling to take out the blueprint, Bai Jianmu took a step forward and whispered to Sun Xinjing, "Master, the blueprint is very important. In my opinion, if you only ask third senior brother to take out the blueprint, he definitely won't do it." Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu paused. He turned to look at Zhang Liji and sneered before continuing, "Master, why don't you let me use some tricks to ask him?" After Sun Xinjing heard Bai Jianmu's words, he was suddenly stunned. He naturally knew what Bai Jianmu meant. The tricks Bai Jianmu mentioned were nothing more than torturing Zhang Liji. However, was that appropriate? Seeing that Sun Xinjing was hesitating, Bai Jianmu hurriedly said again, "Master, this blueprint is really too important to our sect. I think that in order to get it back as soon as possible, it wouldn't be too much even if we use some trick. After all, this blueprint is too important. Master, please make a decision." This time, without waiting for Sun Xinjing's reply, Zhang Liji had already been enraged by Bai Jianmu. At this moment, Zhang Liji couldn't care less. He suddenly stood up and rushed toward Bai Jianmu while roaring at the same time, "Bai Jianmu, you despicable person, I'll kill you!" Who would have thought that when Zhang Liji rushed in front of Bai Jianmu, he would be hit by Bai Jianmu's fist? Zhang Liji screamed and staggered back 3 or 4 steps before falling to the ground. Although Bai Jianmu threw a punch in a panic, the strength of his fist was not small. After Zhang Liji was hit by this punch, he fell to the ground. Although he struggled to stand up, he only felt incomparable pain in his body. For a moment, he actually couldn't stand up. Looking at Zhang Liji who had fallen to the ground, Bai Jianmu snorted coldly and said slowly, "Third senior brother, I found out that you stole the blueprint. That's why you want to take revenge on me." At this point, Bai Jianmu turned to look at Sun Xinjing and clasped his fists. "Master, if it wasn't for the fact that I know some martial arts, I'm afraid that I would have been killed by the angry third senior brother." "Master, please make a decision as soon as possible to prevent undue delay." Sun Xinjing didn't feel good when he saw Zhang Liji lying on the ground. He treated these disciples as if they were his own sons, and he never owed them anything. However, Zhang Liji was willing to betray him for the sake of a blueprint. No, there was also Yi Xian. If Zhang Liji was the one who stole the blueprint, then it must have been Yi Xian who told him where the blueprint was placed. Yi Xian, his most trusted disciple, betrayed him now. Thinking that these two people betrayed him for a blueprint, Sun Xinjing only felt a sense of desolation in his heart. This desolation slowly turned into anger. Looking at Zhang Leji, who had fallen to the ground, Sun Xinjing suddenly slammed the table and shouted, "Zhang Leji, if you don't take out the blueprint, you'll have to suffer." Zhang Leji tried several times but couldn't stand up. He could only lie on the ground and say, "Master, I really didn't do it." As soon as Zhang Leji said this, he saw Sun Xinjing looking at Bai Jianmu. He knew that something bad was going to happen and hurriedly shouted, "Master, this disciple is really innocent. It really has nothing to do with me. It must be Bai Jianmu who wanted to frame me. That's why he was able to find the bronze box in my room. Right, it must have been Bai Jianmu who stole the blueprint. Otherwise, how could he have the bronze box?" Just now, Sun Xinjing turned to look at Bai Jianmu, wanting him to use some tricks to make Zhang Leji take out the blueprint. However, after hearing Zhang Leji's words, Sun Xinjing felt a sense of doubt again. Although the bronze box was found in Zhang Leji's room, if it was really like what Zhang Leji said, that Bai Jianmu deliberately framed him, didn't it mean that Bai Jianmu was the one who stole the blueprint? Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt even more puzzled. Yi Xian and Zhang Leji were suspected of stealing the blueprint, but so was Bai Jianmu. If Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and made everyone think that Yi Xian was the one who stole the blueprint, then he framed Zhang Leji and took the opportunity to drag Zhang Leji down with him. As long as Yi Xian and Zhang Leji became suspects, then Bai Jianmu would benefit the most. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing felt even more suspicious. However, when Bai Jianmu found the bronze box, Lu Huarong testified. If Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and framed Zhang Leji with the bronze box, then why did Lu Huarong testify for him? Could it be that there was something wrong with Lu Huarong? Sun Xinjing felt that this problem was getting more and more complicated. If Zhang Leji was not the one who stole the blueprint, then was it really Bai Jianmu who stole the blueprint? Bai Jianmu saw that Sun Xinjing was just looking at him without saying anything, and in his heart he had a bad feeling, and hurriedly said, "Master, the bronze box was definitely found in third senior apprentice brother's room. This point, junior apprentice brother Lu can testify for this disciple. In addition, I don't know where you put the blueprint. Even if you want me to steal the blueprint, I can't do it. Master, please investigate. This matter must have been done by Yi Xian and third senior brother. Disciple suspects that the reason why I was able to find the bronze box at third senior brother's place was because third senior brother deliberately let me find it." Hearing this, Sun Xinjing's heart suddenly moved. Bai Jianmu continued, "Master, I originally wanted to search the study, but third senior brother asked me to search the bedroom, so he went to search the study himself. I suspect that third senior brother deliberately did this. He wanted me to find the bronze box, then take the opportunity to frame me. Otherwise, why would the bronze box be found so easily? I think, no matter who it is, it's impossible to put such an important thing in such an obvious place. Master, disciple suspects that the reason why we were able to find the bronze box so smoothly was because of third senior brother. He purposely placed the bronze box in an obvious place under the bed so that disciple could find it and achieve his goal of framing me." Chapter 221. After listening to Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing also nodded secretly. If what Bai Jianmu said was true, it was very possible. Zhang Leji deliberately let Bai Jianmu find the bronze box and then said that Bai Jianmu was framing him. Although there was a certain danger in doing so, there was also a high chance of success. Once it succeeded, Bai Jianmu would be the one who stole the blueprint and achieve his goal. Although there was such a possibility, the danger of this method was too high. Under such circumstances, 90% of the people would believe that Zhang Leji was the one who stole the blueprint. If he used this method to frame Bai Jianmu, wouldn't it be too dangerous? If this plan failed, wouldn't he be the one who stole the blueprint? Seeing a hint of hesitation in his master's eyes, Zhang Leji hurriedly said loudly, "Master, don't believe his words. If I stole the blueprint, even if I wanted to frame Bai Jianmu, I would never use such a stupid method. I would definitely think of a safer way. Bai Jianmu heard this and sneered. Third senior brother, how could a person who dared to steal Master's blueprint be afraid of danger? Don't you know that the more dangerous something is, the easier it is for people to believe it? If you use other methods to frame me, although you will be safe, people will be doubtful. However, if you use this method to frame me, as long as it succeeds, not only will you be free from suspicion, but you will also be able to save Yi Xian and achieve your ultimate goal. As for me, I will be framed as the one who stole the blueprint. Speaking of this, Bai Jianmu turned his head again to look at Sun Xinjing and clasped his fist. Master, I believe that the blueprint must be stolen by third senior brother and Yi Xian. If Master believes me, let me use some tricks to make third senior brother take out the blueprint. Isn't that the best way? After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Sun Xinjing hesitated in his heart. The words of these two people had a certain degree of logic. But how should he decide? The key now was to find the blueprint as soon as possible. But who stole the blueprint? If he let Bai Jianmu use some tricks on Zhang Liji, what if it wasn't Zhang Liji who stole the blueprint? Or rather, what if Bai Jianmu stole the blueprint and he thought it was Zhang Liji who stole it? What should he do if he let Bai Jianmu torture Zhang Liji? At this moment, Sun Xinjing didn't speak. No one dared to speak. Everyone was waiting for Sun Xinjing's decision. However, Sun Xinjing was hesitating now. He didn't know who stole the blueprint. Could he lock Zhang Liji and Bai Jianmu in the Repentance Pavilion? Zhang Liji was the culprit was the one who stole? The culprit was the one who stole the blueprint was the culprit. Was the culprit was the culprit, who was the culprit, purposely put the blame was the culprit? Although both of them were suspects, it did not seem appropriate to lock them up in the Repentance Pavilion. Just when Sun Xinjing was hesitating, he heard a voice in his ear. Branch leader Sun, is this matter very difficult to handle? After Sun Xinjing heard this sentence, he suddenly woke up from his contemplation. He turned his head and looked at the source of the voice. He saw that the person who spoke was Prince Zhang. Sun Xinjing was too excited just now. He forgot that there were two guests here. Thinking of this, Sun Xinjing said to Zhang Meng apologetically, Prince Zhang, our sect has some matters to deal with. Please take a rest first. After we deal with these matters, I will send someone to invite the two of you. We will discuss your matter in detail. Zhang Meng listened to Sun Xinjing's answer and nodded. He turned his head and glanced at Zhang Liji and Bai Jianmu. Then, he looked at Sun Xinjing again and said with a smile, Branch leader Sun, are you thinking about who is the culprit? Sun Xinjing listened to Zhang Meng's words and nodded. Indeed. Zhang Meng said, actually, Branch leader Sun doesn't need to be so worried. This matter is very simple. You just need to ask and you will know who is lying. Sun Xinjing heard this and his eyes suddenly lit up. He quickly asked, Prince Zhang, how should I ask? After listening to Sun Xinjing's words, Zhang Meng was about to speak when Bai Jianmu suddenly asked, May I ask if this young master is a member of our sect? After listening to Bai Jianmu's question, Zhang Meng shook his head. No, I am here to ask someone to build a house for me. Bai Jianmu heard this and nodded. He turned to a disciple next to him and said loudly, You, go and take this young master to rest. After instructing the disciple, Bai Jianmu turned his head to look at Zhang Meng and said with a smile, This young master, it's not convenient for outsiders to interfere in our sect's affairs. I ask this young master to take a rest first. After we've dealt with the matters here, we'll entertain you. After saying this, Bai Jianmu stretched out his hand and made a gesture to Zhang Meng. Seeing this, Zhang Meng shook his head. There is no need to rest. You are too slow in dealing with matters here. My matter is very urgent, so I want to help you and quickly deal with the matters here so that I can deal with my matter. After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Bai Jianmu sneered. Then, he slowly walked towards Zhang Meng. As he walked, he sneered, "This must be Prince Zhang. Didn't your elders teach you that it is very impolite to meddle in other people's affairs?" After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Meng was a little unhappy. He was kind enough to help, and even Sun Xinjing agreed. This guy was still talking nonsense here. Not only that, he even said that his elders did not teach him well. This made Zhang Meng a little embarrassed. Bai Jianmu sneered and came to Zhang Meng's side. He stretched out his hand and patted Zhang Meng's shoulder. In a cold voice, he said, "Prince Zhang, I think you should go and rest quickly. You can't meddle in the matters here." As he spoke, Bai Jianmu grabbed Zhang Meng's shoulder tightly and pulled him to the side. Then, he turned his head and said to the disciple who came over, "Send this young master to rest." According to Bai Jianmu's plan, he would push Zhang Meng to the side with one hand and then let the disciple take Zhang Meng to rest. This matter would be over. Even if he angered Zhang Meng, at most, he would apologize in the future and say more good words. In short, today's matter could not be ruined by others. Bai Jianmu had waited for so long and finally carried out the plan. Seeing that it was about to succeed, how could he allow others to ruin it? For this plan, Bai Jianmu could do anything. As long as he achieved his goal, he felt that it was worth it. As for what others thought, it had nothing to do with him. Chapter 222. Although Bai Jianmu's plan was very good, the development of the matter was completely different from what he had imagined. He grabbed Zhang Meng's hand and exerted force, but he realized that the other party did not even move. Bai Jianmu was shocked and hurriedly exerted more force. However, the other party still did not react at all and was still looking at him with a smile. Seeing the smile on Zhang Meng's face, Bai Jianmu was a little annoyed. He suddenly raised his other hand and grabbed Zhang Meng's other shoulder. At the same time, he exerted force with both hands and pushed forward forcefully, wanting to push Zhang Meng back to his original position. Unfortunately, Zhang Meng, who was not very strong, was like a stone pillar. He still did not move at all. Not only that, even the smile on his face did not seem to have changed. When Bai Jianmu saw this scene, he was shocked. He quickly let go of his hand and took 2 steps back, looking at Zhang Meng in surprise. If Zhang Meng's face showed a strained expression, he would still dare to continue trying. However, Zhang Meng's face did not change at all. The force he used just now was like a breeze, having no effect at all. Others might not know, but Bai Jianmu himself was quite clear. When he grabbed Zhang Meng with both hands and pushed with all his might, he had used almost all his strength, but the other party did not change at all. What did this mean? It meant that the other party's strength was definitely not inferior to his. The reason why Bai Jianmu dared to shout at Zhang Leji was that he was not afraid of Zhang Leji. In the South County branch, Bai Jianmu was not afraid of anyone because it was no exaggeration to say that he was the person with the highest martial arts skills here. If Bai Jianmu wanted to deal with Zhang Leji, he only needed to use one hand to beat Zhang Leji up. Therefore, he did not put Zhang Leji in his eyes. However, facing the unfathomable Zhang Meng, Bai Jianmu was a little hesitant. If he could avoid offending such an enemy, it was better to get along peacefully. Thinking of this, Bai Jianmu hurriedly raised his hand, cupped his fists towards Zhang Meng, and said with a smile, "This little brother, this matter that has happened in our sect is of great importance, so I would like to ask little brother to leave for a moment. After dealing with this matter, I will apologize in person, so I hope little brother can forgive me. Please." After saying this, Bai Jianmu modestly gestured to Zhang Meng. At the same time, he signaled to the disciples behind Zhang Meng with his eyes. The disciple standing next to Zhang Meng hurriedly bowed to Zhang Meng after seeing Bai Jianmu's signal and said, "Mister, please." Seeing this, Zhang Meng waved his hand indifferently. "No need, I can stay here. Seeing that Zhang Meng had no intention of leaving, Bai Jianmu could not help but frown. He hurriedly cupped his fists again and said, "Little brother, you also know the rules. It is better not to interfere in other people's sect matters, lest you break the rules." After hearing Bai Jianmu's words, Zhang Meng waved his hand again. "You don't have to be polite. Your branch leader has already said that I can stay, so this is not considered breaking the rules." When Bai Jianmu heard this, he was about to speak when Sun Xinjing suddenly said, "All right, let him stay." After saying this, Sun Xinjing waved his hand at Zhang Meng and said with a smile, "Prince Zhang, sit here." When Zhang Meng heard this, he nodded and no longer paid attention to Bai Jianmu. He quickly walked to Sun Xinjing and found a seat to sit down. After seeing Zhang Meng sit down, Sun Xinjing slowly asked, "Prince Zhang, just now, you said that as long as we interrogate them, we will know who is faking it?" After hearing Sun Xinjing's question, Zhang Meng smiled and nodded. "Of course, for such things, as long as we ask, it will naturally be clear." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Sun Xinjing's eyes suddenly lit up and he hurriedly asked, "Prince Zhang, are you confident?" Zhang Meng nodded again and said with a smile, "This is a very simple matter, of course I am confident." After hearing Zhang Meng's answer, Sun Xinjing was suddenly overjoyed. He slammed the table and said with a smile, "Well, I will let you handle this matter. What do you think, is this okay?" Zhang Meng nodded, "No problem." The reason why Sun Xinjing let Zhang Meng handle this matter was not because he trusted Zhang Meng, but because he really had no other choice. The several disciples each had their own reasons, and these words were very reasonable in Sun Xinjing's ears. The key problem now was that Bai Jianmu found the bronze box that contained the blueprint in Zhang Leji's room. However, Zhang Leji did not admit that the box was from his room. Bai Jianmu was certain that this thing was from Zhang Leji's room. Between these two opinions, Sun Xinjing didn't know who to believe. Bai Jianmu found the bronze box that contained the blueprint in Zhang Leji's room. The key was that he had a witness. When he went to search the room, Lu Huarong and he searched together. Lu Huarong could testify for him that the bronze box containing the blueprint was indeed found in Zhang Leji's room. The evidence was conclusive. Logically speaking, Zhang Leji should not quibble anymore. However, he turned around and said that Bai Jianmu was suspicious. The reason why he could find the bronze box in his room was that he deliberately put it in the room and used it to frame him. Not only that, Zhang Leji also believed that the blueprint was Bai Jianmu's. Otherwise, Bai Jianmu wouldn't have the bronze box. Looking at the expressions of the two, it didn't seem like they were lying. However, in such a tit-for-tat matter, one of them must be lying. The question was, who was the lying person? Now, the bronze box containing the blueprint had been found. Next, as long as he found out who was lying, he should be able to find the blueprint. Most importantly, who was the lying person? On this point, Sun Xinjing couldn't be sure. Now, nothing was important. The most important thing was to get the blueprint back. Since he couldn't do it, and Zhang Meng said that he had a way, then he would let him try. Anyway, he wouldn't lose anything. It was also because of these reasons that Sun Xinjing decided to believe Zhang Meng's words and let Zhang Meng investigate this case for him. He wanted to find out who was lying and who was the disciple who stole his blueprint. Although Zhang Meng didn't have a complete understanding of this matter, he had heard about it from the other disciples before coming here. Then, he came to Zhang Leji's place and listened to Zhang Leji's explanation. Thus, he more or less understood the whole matter. Just now, he had been watching from the side. Naturally, he knew what happened clearly. The person who pushed him found the bronze box in the room of the person lying on the ground. What everyone was arguing about was who was lying. This bronze box was placed in the room by the person lying on the ground, and the person who pushed him deliberately framed the person lying on the ground. Chapter 223. This was where the dispute lay. Thinking of this, Zhang Meng waved his hand at Bai Jianmu and Zhang Leji and said loudly, "Okay, come here. Let me ask you." After hearing Zhang Meng's words, Bai Jianmu's gaze turned cold. However, when he turned to look at his master who was sitting at the head of the table, he clenched his teeth and quickly walked over to Zhang Meng. At this moment, Zhang Leji had already recovered a lot. He sat up from the ground. After hearing Zhang Meng's shout, Mei Guangji quickly stepped forward to help Zhang Leji up and brought him in front of Zhang Meng. Seeing that the two of them were already in front of him, Zhang Meng turned his head to look at Bai Jianmu. He pointed to the bronze box on the ground and asked, "You found this bronze box in his room, right?" Bai Jianmu didn't say anything and just nodded. Seeing Bai Jianmu nod, Zhang Meng turned to look at Zhang Leji and asked, "Did you find that bronze box in your room? Or should I say, is that bronze box yours?" Hearing Zhang Meng's question, Zhang Leji immediately shook his head and said loudly, "No, that bronze box doesn't belong to me. I didn't steal the blueprint." After hearing Zhang Leji's answer, Zhang Meng nodded and said, "You mean that bronze box doesn't belong to you?" But, speaking of this, Zhang Meng paused for a moment. He pointed at Bai Jianmu and continued, "Didn't you hear him say that he found it in your room?" Hearing this, Zhang Leji hurriedly answered loudly, "He's talking nonsense. That bronze box doesn't belong to me. He wants to frame me with it." After hearing Zhang Leji's answer, Zhang Meng frowned and said, "You said that he framed you. Do you have any reason or evidence?" After listening to Zhang Meng's question, Zhang Leji was stunned. For a while, he couldn't answer Zhang Meng's question. Just now, when everyone went to search, they split up into groups of two. Zhang Leji and Tang Jinan were in the same group. Bai Jianmu and Lu Huarong were in the same group. They searched their own rooms, so naturally, they couldn't see what each other was doing. Needless to say, there was no evidence to prove that Bai Jianmu had framed him. Seeing that Zhang Leji didn't answer his question, Zhang Meng asked again, "Since there's no evidence to prove that he's framing you, it means that this thing should be yours, right?" After Zhang Leji heard Zhang Meng's words, he suddenly became anxious and said loudly, "Prince Zhang, I'm not that kind of person. Think about it, if I really stole the blueprint, why would I ask my master to reinvestigate this matter? Wouldn't that be asking for trouble? Young Master Zhang, think about it carefully. When you first arrived, wasn't it me who went to look for master and gathered everyone?" After hearing Zhang Leji's words, Zhang Meng nodded and said, "You're right, that's true. But even so, it doesn't prove that the bronze box doesn't belong to you." This time, without waiting for Zhang Meng to speak, Bai Jianmu had already spoken first. "Young Master Zhang, you are absolutely right. What he did, he probably did it for you to see. Third senior brother did this so that no one would suspect him. That's why he asked his master to gather everyone." Speaking up to this point, Bai Jianmu paused and turned to look at Zhang Leji. He said loudly, "Third senior brother, before this, the biggest suspect was Yi Xian. Naturally, no one would suspect you. What you did will only make everyone less suspicious of you. What about you, third senior brother? Can you use this opportunity to carry out your plan?" Zhang Leji was furious after hearing Bai Jianmu's words. He roared in a hoarse voice, "You're talking nonsense. What plan do I have? I asked Master to gather everyone just to find out who stole the blueprint. What plan do I have? What purpose do I have?" Bai Jianmu didn't get angry when he heard Zhang Leji's shouting. He just smiled faintly and turned to look at Zhang Meng. "Prince Zhang, you've just arrived here, so you don't know what's going on here. Only Yi Xian knows where my master put the blueprint. The others don't know where my master put it. So, the blueprint can only be stolen by Yi Xian. But what's Yi Xian's motive for stealing the blueprint? Prince Zhang, you might not know. My master is about to resign from his position as the branch leader, so the position will be empty. Yi Xian wants to be the branch leader, so he stole my master's blueprint to frame someone else. He wants to get rid of his rival so he can be the branch leader more securely. Of course, when Yi Xian stole the drawing, he had already thought about it. If the drawing was lost, as the only one who knew where it was kept, he would definitely be suspected. Therefore, after stealing the drawing, he left it with third senior brother. Then he asked third senior brother to work for him outside and get rid of his competitors. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't expect third senior brother to be too careless. Or maybe he didn't expect us to search his room so quickly. That's why we found the bronze box with the blueprint. After saying this, Bai Jianmu glanced coldly at Zhang Liji. When Zhang Liji heard Bai Jianmu's words, he immediately flew into a rage. He pointed at Bai Jianmu and roared loudly. Bai Jianmu, you despicable person! You stole the blueprint and now you're framing me as the thief. Before Zhang Liji could finish his words, Bai Jianmu suddenly shouted, Zhang Liji, now that the evidence is conclusive, you still dare to quibble? Do you think everyone is a fool? After Bai Jianmu finished speaking, Lu Huarong also stepped forward and said, Third senior brother, a man dares to take responsibility for his actions. Since you dared to steal the blueprint, you should admit it. Why do you have to be like this? You don't even dare to admit it. You even want to frame someone else. Third senior brother, wake up. Don't go astray and do something that will betray the sect. Hearing Lu Huarong's words, Zhang Liji was so angry that he couldn't speak. He raised his hand and pointed at Lu Huarong. Lu Huarong, I didn't expect you to be such a despicable person. You even came out with Bai Jianmu to deceive people. I was wrong about you. As soon as Zhang Liji's voice fell, Tang Jianan also jumped out and said loudly, Third junior brother, since the bronze box with the blueprint was found in your room, it can be regarded as conclusive evidence. Just admit it. If you take out the blueprint now, for the sake of our previous friendship, Master will not punish you severely. Third junior brother, I beg you. Don't do something that will betray the sect. After saying this, Tang Jianan felt that it wasn't enough, so he cupped his fists and bowed deeply to Zhang Liji. After hearing Tang Jianan and Lu Huarong's words, Bai Jianmu turned to look at Zhang Liji and said coldly, You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.